Welcome everyone to the Rapid Chess Championship presented by Coinbase. I'm International Master Anna Rudolf, and I'm always honored and thrilled to be hosting the show together with Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky. Daniel, how are you feeling about today's rounds that are ahead of us?
Thank you, and hello, Anna. I am feeling pumped as usual. My adrenaline is already coursing. Robert and I commentated an incredibly epic JSEC qualifier yesterday, so I can think of no better way to start the weekend than another amazing week of RCC. And, you know, the leaderboard in the RCC, Anna, it's starting to get pretty well defined as we enter the middle period of the season.
It is true. Fabiano Caruana has been slaying it every single weekend. He has played in all the 8 previous editions, and we hope to see him today too for week 9. Out of the 8 participations, he has scored already 44 GP points, which is 14 points ahead of Hikaru Nakamura.
Yeah, I don't think it's possible to overemphasize how impressive that is, given how ridiculously strong the RCC field is week in and week out. Fabi has had some bad weeks, but overall, Anna, it's been incredibly smooth sailing for Fabiano. He's been beating Hikaru Nakamura in the finals. He's getting into the top 8 pretty easily. And as we look at the Grand Prix point distribution, you know, getting 44 points, that's a lot of weeks of doing incredibly well.
It is indeed a lot of impressive performances. He has qualified to the knockout stage 6 times out of his 8 participations, and we shall see whether this weekend will be yet another stellar performance for Fabiano, or will we see Hikaru taking over? Hikaru is already streaming that he will be participating in the Rapid Chess Championship, so that is no longer a secret. Of course, all this event could not be possible without our sponsor, so let me thank our sponsor Coinbase. The Rapid Chess Championship is brought to you by Coinbase. Whether you're looking to make your first crypto purchase or you're an experienced trader, Coinbase has you covered. Earn crypto by learning about crypto with Coinbase Earn, explore DeFi and Web3 with Coinbase Wallet, and get exclusive rewards when you spend with Coinbase Card, and much, much more. Learn more at coinbase.com/chess and get $10 in Bitcoin when you sign up and verify your account. Danya, I still need to verify my account, but I want to get all those Bitcoins, the $10 in Bitcoins for just existing.
Hey, free money.
I know, I love free stuff.
By the side of the road. So get on that for sure.
Indeed, we are going to get on the rounds. That's what I was going to say, Danya. Sorry for interrupting you there, but we do have a quick obligatory run of ads. But after the ads, we promise the round will begin, all the chess section will heat up, and Danya and I will cover everything that's to be covered by Fabiano's games, Hikaru's participation, and all the rest of the Grandmasters. See you in a moment.
Did you know you can watch top chess events right on your phone? You don't even need to download an app. Just open any mobile browser and head to chess.com/events. You can see what's happening right now, check out top games, see results, and so much more. Try it for yourself at chess.com/events.
Welcome back, everyone, to the broadcast of the Rapid Chess Championship presented by Coinbase. Danya and I cannot wait to see the clashes of today. Some of the webcams are very promising. So many of the top grandmasters in the world are ready to compete. Danya, what do you think of these camera angles? Which one would be your favorite as a streamer?
Oh, these are great. I always like the ones where you can see them from behind, like Jan's camera angle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I like looking at their setups and looking at their rooms. I think it's kind of cool. But we can see a lot of rubbing of eyes and sort of adrenaline, looking up. But once the games begin, they all settle in to their sort of routine.
Very true. This is the last few seconds before the games kick in. Just a reminder to our viewers that today's event is the Swiss format. And in the Swiss format, we have 9 rounds with the time control being 10 minutes, no increment. And that is a huge difference between Saturdays and Sundays format. Tomorrow in the knockout stage, there will be an increment in Saturday's event, which I have never hosted before, Daniel. I'm so excited to be here for the time scrambles with no increment. It is possible that some of the games will be decided on time by flagging the opponent.
Saturdays are great. You get such a nice choice of games, choice of players to watch, and it's a little bit frenetic, because we try to cover all of the interesting moments in games. But I can't wait to jump in. The games have begun. I pulled up here Hikaru Nakamura's game against Indian lad. That's SL Narayanan, Grandmaster from India.
So far, the opening is one of the more solid approaches, but Black did choose the double fianchetto in this queen's pawn opening, and after the trade on c4, it seems that Hikaru is spending a bit of time to decide whether to take back on c4 with the bishop or with the pawn.
Yeah, and I mean, taking with the bishop might run into knight e5, which kind of chases the bishop back to e2. He goes knight d to b5, so neither. He just leaves the pawn on c4, and instead, he is going after the d6 square.
It makes more sense that he has found a more active move because, as you said, bishop takes c4 had a few drawbacks, and the pawn capture on c4 doesn't seem any appealing. Knight d6, on the other hand, that octopus knight would be impressive.
Yeah, and even if you were just to trade the knight for the bishop, that's already a pretty big gain for white, eliminating arguably Black's strongest piece. So the question for Black is whether he can get away with playing c takes b3. And then this has to be calculated. And, sort of my first question is, well, what if Black just plays b takes a2? Let's say queen takes a2.
All the pawns after one another, a domino effect there.
It's Black's 2 pawns up. White no longer has a queen side. So if Hikaru doesn't have anything concrete here, I think Black is probably more than fine.
So potentially 2 pawns are being sacrificed here with this move knight to b5, but Hikaru seems to be confident about this active choice, and his opponent doesn't want to try what was going to happen in case he accepted the pawn sacrifices.
And I think Black should have taken b3 because you're not going to get another chance to win a pawn. Now it seems like Hikaru might, he goes rook f1. And if the Black queen moves, as it does, then Hikaru puts his knight on d6. And he's going to take the bishop on b7. And I think he's going to have a very small but stable advantage. This is the kind of position Hikaru loves having.
And that is all without having pawn down. So equal material once he takes back on c4 and a pair of bishops for Hikaru.
Yeah, I wonder if he's thinking about something like b4. No, but he plays bishop takes c4. And now I would be tempted, to play knight fe4. Wow, they're playing so quickly. And knight fe4 is on the board, and lots of trades are on tap here. So this could end up being very drawish.
Yeah, and I like knight e4 because Black is now getting rid of the pair of bishops of white once the dark square bishops are traded, and further trades on e4, obviously. So that endgame, what would that endgame have been like if Black had captured with the queen was going to be my question, but they're playing the move so fast that I didn't want to trade queens.
I would have spent a little bit longer deciding between knight takes e4, queen takes e4. Black seems very confident in this position. In the eval bar, you can see it's not seeing anything significant for white at all. Another trade, and queen c7 preparing another trade. Anna, this is like everything's going off the board. Bishop f3, rook d instantly. Because
of the back rank, white cannot win the knight in case of the trades. It looks like that. So because of this back rank motif, it was not possible to capture the e4 knight after the rook trade. Rook c1 was played by Hikaru. Everything is the same except for it's a knight versus bishop. And again, you cannot take on e4 because of queen d1 check, sacrificing the queen for checkmate.
You looked like you needed some coffee there. But
it is still early after all. Not on the West Coast, but still. What time is it in Florida?
Noon. It's same as it is in Charlotte. It's noon, so it is early. It's still very
early. I mean, for chess players.
This is my ideal wake-up time. Right. But on the Pacific Coast, it's 9 a.m. I mean, that is a crazy start for a chess player.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, more than humane, but chess players are a different breed, of course.
Very true. Very true that noon is still early for most chess players. H4 was played by Hikaru to make sure that there is no back rank issue. So the knight has now moved away, heading toward d3, similar pattern as Hikaru's move was earlier.
Queen f6. Okay, so Hikaru, obviously his dream is to play h5, h6, but black is not going to allow that. E65 looks tempting to me, and he plays it. The only thing is that this endgame is not necessarily a dead draw. The bishop might be a smidge better than the knight, especially if it can get to d5. So we do have a queen trade b4. I'm anticipating knight e6 in order to prevent the rook from infiltrating to the 7th rank. Although knight d3, I guess. Okay, wow. This is crazy, and black is playing instantly.
7 minutes still on the clock. This is rapid chess. It's called Rapid Chess Championship. But he only has spent 3 minutes so far, and we are in an endgame with not many pieces left. He's very confidently holding, it seems.
Yeah, and bishop d1, I like that move by Hikaru a lot. The bishop is rerouting toward b3. Well, what is it doing on b3? It's putting pressure on the knight on e6, and you could have a trade at some point later if it guarantees the rook passage to c7. Rook d7 by black and knight c7, escaping the contact with the bishop. And Hikaru starting to expand his king side.
To which his opponent responds with simply h6, making sure that he has a chance to either trade or push further the pawn in case of h5 or g5, which I don't think either of them would be played. Obviously, the pawn would get too weak if you press too much on the king side. But the arrows that Daniel is drawing, activating the king, certainly is on Hikaru's mind.
I don't understand what Narayanan thinks he's doing, because you can't draw Hikaru just by trading a couple of pieces and, playing sloppy moves in the endgame. And that's exactly what he's doing. Now he's worse. He continues to play instantly, but if Hikaru gets his king to e4, and he's going to win the pawn on e5, and he's going to win the game.
Yeah, this is very strange how fast Narayan is playing this game, as if he was afraid that he would get into time pressure later and lose on time against Hikaru. But with 6 minutes on the clock, 6.5 minutes, he really should have spent a bit longer on this endgame.
Now, listen, if he pulls out a draw here, which is not unlikely, although he's now slightly worse, then I'll take my hat off. And that would be incredibly impressive. I'm not wearing a hat, but I'll take my proverbial hat off. So, I mean, if this works for him, then by all means, this is how you should play against Hikaru. He goes f5. That's a very committal move. I was thinking, wow, bishop a4. So Hikaru trying to kick the rook off of the 7th rank so that he can infiltrate to c7. Therefore, rook b7.
But that feels so passive, that the rook has to be guarding the 7th rank, and knight is now on b7, a little bit blocked by its own pawns.
Mm-hmm. And g5 by Hikaru, very instructive move. He is fixing the pawn on a light square so that later on, you can imagine a scenario where black's king walks toward the center. White could have bishop e8 at a very inopportune moment for black. So this is sort of a move that is aimed at creating long-term weaknesses. Well, white is definitely pushing for a win here, no question about it.
Yeah, I am still surprised by the time management of Narayan. Now he started spending a bit longer, but isn't it a bit too late now with the pawn on g5 and the bishop being the better piece here with pawns on both flanks, and white's rook is also more active than black's rook.
And black's just putting all of his pawns on light squares where they can be picked off by the bishop. His idea is to get his rook to the open file, but now Hikaru advances his king toward the center. Notice that earlier there was a fork on d5. Now there isn't. Hikaru just infiltrating d5. This is horrendous play by Narayanan. This is, I mean, he's just tilting off the face of the earth.
And the
and it's over.
valuation bar has rocketed, obviously, for all that activity that we can see white pieces dominating the board. Only 3 pieces and the pawns, but it's enough when the king is so active and the rook and bishop taking all the squares away from black where you could get counterplay.
Black's entire position is paralyzed. And as you said, just because there are only 3 pieces left doesn't mean that white can't get a decisive attack. Bishop e6 is coming. King e6, rook c7. Black cannot contain all of the infiltration squares that white's 3 pieces have to share among them. And that king on g7 totally restricted by white's bishop as well. This game is over.
And now it does feel like the time management, as you pointed out, Danya, it was way too fast to play like this against Hikaru, and he's getting punished for it.
And now he's going to probably walk back and take them. Although, wait a second. King d6 could result in some sort of Zugzwang if you can dominate the knight. So I think Hikaru deciding between king d4, which obviously wins the pawn and offers excellent winning chances. Yeah, no, king d4 is probably the simplest. King d4, yeah, that's what he plays. He's just going to win the pawn, and then the other pawns are all going to be sitting ducks.
I'm still so puzzled by those pawn pushes from earlier, because the light square bishop, this is exactly what you want for white, that the opponent's pawns are on light squares, and it was black who willingly pushed the pawns to light squares.
Yeah, and somebody was asking in chat why Hikaru didn't go king f4 directly. So if I rewind a little bit earlier, king f4 walked into a fork, knight d5 check. So he had to step aside, and then once his bishop came to b3, then and only then could he advance his king toward f4 and e5. So he's going to win this game. I mean, even e4 in this position looks, although e4, maybe there's a fortress. So yeah, he just takes it. Now king takes d2 and king e3 and f4 is going to end it, or bishop d5, bishop b7, and just take everything.
Yeah, that knight is dominated by the king. There's no further way back or even an attempt to attack white's pawns. It's just, unfortunately, a very sad endgame, what we have witnessed from Narayan's perspective, and a great one for Hikaru, a great start. It was a dominant way in which he made a slight advantage continue to be a bigger and bigger issue for black. It wasn't a very impressive endgame at the start. It didn't feel like white had much, but Hikaru kept building up the advantage while black made very quick and not so precise moves.
And we can trust him to win this. This is what he does. He often gets these positions you think, it's a draw. You know, that's it. Even Hikaru won't be able to create chances here. And literally, like 4 moves later, it's +5. It's uncanny. Yeah. So you just cannot play that quickly in those critical moments against him. Black had to be more accurate. We could delve into the specific moments when he went wrong, but you know, suffice it to say that it was never a dead draw. It was always a game. I've switched here to the second board, Lei Kwang Lim against Caruana. That is a rough pairing for Fabi. Lei Kwang is one of the strongest rapid players in the world. And I think white is up 2 pawns. In the opinion of international master Mnat Sakhanyan, white is up 2 pawns.
This is 2 pawns that I see myself too. Danya, I am puzzled by how those pawns disappeared from Fabi's queen side. But what we do know that now that we tune in, Fabi wishes this was close to equal, though he has to be fighting here a lot to even try to create any practical chances, any threats, any tricks, because objectively speaking, his position is lost.
Yeah, you can see the eval bar reflecting that. The only chance for Fabi is his active pieces. He's got the queen and the knight in the center. He's got that bishop on b7, which could be a participant in some sort of swindle ideas involving tactics. Knight takes g3 is a threat. Bishop c4. Okay, so white allows knight takes g3. I think his idea might be bishop takes c6, though.
Oh.
And all of a sudden, white is the one aiming for checkmate here rather than black. But queen takes g6 is coming.
This has to be the idea. At the same time, I feel like if there is some tactical chances after knight g3, Fabi will spot it. His calculation is one of his forte. Knight takes g6, queen d3 is what Lei Kwang Lim chose.
Okay, but that makes a lot more sense because I think this actually forces the queen trade because the knight is hanging.
Exactly, you're right. And he doesn't mind that he lost one of the pawns on the king side because what matters is the two connected pass pawns on the queen side.
Which rumble forward unstoppably. Knight has to drop back. Oh, Fabi's sacrificing a piece. So he basically figures that the end game is totally hopeless and instead gives up the knight in order to keep the queen on the board. Queen's on the board. Okay, so he's threatening checkmate. And what Fabi's saying is that after F3, he has queen B1 check. And at the very least, he can snag another pawn.
Yeah, it is a piece down. Okay.
Defended.
That is why the evaluation bar is screaming that it's even bigger of an advantage. He's trying to bring the queen back to c7 to guard f7.
Yeah, notice knight takes g6 there looked very tempting, but it would have actually failed to queen c2 check with a fork. So
that's staying so on top. Pretty. That is very pretty.
So tricky. I mean, these top guys, they never stop trying to trick you, even when they're down a piece and completely lost. But this should be a matter of putting a couple of finishing touches on the game. He's also up over a minute on the clock, and there's no increment in the Saturday Swiss. So this should be a pretty straightforward win for Kwang.
Yeah, not a very good start for Fabiano, who, as we have said, he has dominated all the previous weekends. Almost every single weekend was a success for Fabi. He's leading the overall GP, but not with this first round. He will have 98. Another 8 rounds to try to make up for it.
I think 98 is a brilliant move that ends the game immediately. He's going to find it. He's going to
calculating. Find it. Yeah. He definitely is calculating it.
The wheels are turning and he finds it. And if e5, then there's queen e3 check. And then you take the queen. And if you take the knight, you get checkmated. Fabi resigns. What a game.
Wow. We did not catch the start of it, so we don't know how he ended up being 2 pawns down. But from where we tuned in, it was a very impressive and clean conversion by Le Quangliem.
And Levon crushed Christian. Wait, is Hikaru still playing? No, Hikaru won. He won. I was like, no way.
Trapping the knight. Yeah,
we've got
that was a nice finish.
Couple more games here. Bortnik against Andreykin. We were laughing before the broadcasts. There's Andreyka, and that's Andrei Yesipenko.
I thought he was trolling Andreykin. I genuinely asked Danya, like, is this some kind of a meme or he's trolling his compatriot?
And Andreyka is like Andy, it's like a nickname for Andre, which is Andrew, of course. Okay, so will Bortnik hold this with 23 seconds left and no increment? This is a draw, Anna, but 20 seconds. Let's see if Andreykin tries to flag him.
That is fair chess on YouTube, not Andreyka. Yeah, flagging certainly could be an issue here for Bortnik, although Bortnik is known as one of the fastest online chess players in the chess.com event.
Yeah, but 10 seconds, he's got, rook d1 check, I thought was clean. Rook d1 check, you could have just kept checking the rook. He goes h7, rook h2. Okay, you've just got 2 rooks against 2 rooks, but Andreykin's going to flag him. This is a pretty easy flag, even against Bortnik.
Yeah, I think there's not much I can do with 7 seconds versus 1 minute 7 seconds. He should have played faster earlier, but easier said than done.
Trade one of the rooks if you're Andreykin, because Black could get mated here.
It would be funny if we see a checkmate.
But it was,
instead of
White
flagging,
just has a perpetual here.
Yeah, the problem for Bortnik is that he does have to think, or when he's pre-moving, he pre-moved rook d1, but it wasn't a check.
Okay, well, there's just no hope here. He's got 2 seconds. As long as Dmitry doesn't blunder his rook or accidentally offer a rook trade. Oh, he gave him a draw.
Oh, now
Dmitry, what a class act.
Lives up to his username, Fair Chess. He didn't want to win on time. Wow.
Dang, Anna, I would have never had the, I don't know the what, but the whatever it is that Dmitry Andreykin has to offer a draw there. That is incredibly sweet of him, obviously. In a tournament like this, where every half point counts.
Yeah. He has played really well in previous Rapid Chess Championship weekends as well. He already won one of our knockout formats, and today he doesn't take that free half a point that he could have gotten if he flexed his opponent.
Yeah, you can only admire that. And I know that I've known him for years now. He is an absolute class act and gentleman, and hopefully he gets rewarded for that. Apparently, Robert Hess blundered his rook in a theoretically drawn endgame, but no, Robert. Rook H1 is still a draw here. This is actually in a pretty elementary draw.
Oh,
that's sad. Sorry, I'm biased, obviously.
We are biased here. Please forgive us. Oh well, that's not the best of start for Robert, but he is streaming, so many of the players actually are streaming today. This is already round 2, but just before we head into the analysis of the games, I would like to remind our viewers that if you would like to watch the show, all of these amazing broadcasts on chess.com without advertisements, please do consider subscribing. You can also subscribe for free with Prime if you have the lovely blue crown next to your name with which you can claim your free subscription.
Absolutely. You should subscribe if you have, any shame, if you have a conscience. No, just kidding. Okay, so round 2 is underway, Anna.
Guilting people into subscribing. I love it.
I'm just going to leave that there. Sarana against Hikaru. That is an iconic RCC matchup by now. They've played so many times, and I feel like Hikaru struggles against Alexei in the opening, but then always seems to sort of turn the tables on him in the end.
Yeah, that seems to have been the case. Sarana, by the way, I think is one of the few other players other than Fabiano who played in every single weekend edition. And today is week 9, so 8 times I've already competed in a Rapid Chess Championship.
And he is in 12th place on the Grand Prix leaderboard, so he hasn't always done amazing, but just with his consistent, the fact that he's been playing, he raises the chances that obviously he's going to have a decent tournament every once in a while. So this is not the most interesting opening. They've got a Queen's Gambit accepted endgame, lots of piece trades once again. So we'll check back in on this, but let's maybe have a look at some of the other top boards to see if anybody has a more interesting middle game. We've got Levon on board 2. Let me pull up his game. Ooh.
Oh, more interesting. Yeah, it looks very exciting.
Wait a second.
So he's going for the rook, right? Queen G3 does pick up the rook. This wasn't for a perpetual check.
So rook B8, H3. Wait, isn't H6 just a blunder? I don't know. Is this theory?
11 is thinking now. Is he thinking about playing Bishop G4 so that the queen is guarding the rook?
No, I mean, he's definitely, probably Bishop G4. But if you have to play Bishop G4, that means you've messed up horribly. Oof. King H8, queen takes B8, and the queen isn't really trapped here. It's got plenty of escape squares. Look at the engine. I mean, no, black has to play Bishop G4, and this is just terrible. Sorry, not after queen takes G4.
The Botas Gambit, but H takes G4 instead.
Levon just had an epic screw up here with H6, allowing Bishop takes H6. He confused something here.
Yeah, and this is a very well-known theoretical line. He himself has played it, I believe, with both colors multiple times. He must have mixed up something, as you said, Danya, because now it is either that he will lose the rook on B8 if he moves the king, or if he plays Bishop G4 after H takes G4, the rook will be saved, but not the king side. That black king is very, very weak.
I mean, he clearly can't believe it. He's sitting there. He's got 7 minutes. You can see he's got his hand on his forehead, just that what did I just do pose. And after Bishop G4, it's not totally lost. It's about 0.7. White is up a pawn, but there's opposite colored bishops. And if black can manage a queen trade, I think he's going to have some chances to hold this position. But we'll keep an eye on what Levon does here. He's in pretty big trouble right out of the gates. And apparently Nepo played a King's Gambit. Oh, did Nepo lose?
What? Can we check? Can we check real quick?
He lost the adjustment.
Already?
No, but in round 1, I mean, in round 1.
Oh, okay. I was like, we've just started a round. Plays the King's Gambit and loses in 10 moves. So what happened?
He lost it with the black pieces in round 1 against Jospin. I actually want to see if he is playing the King's Gambit in round 2. I'm just curious. Let me pull up his game.
Sure. Lever in the meantime chose Bishop G4 as Danya analyzed already for us, that H takes G4 position.
It was not fake news. He did play the King's Gambit in round 2.
Wow.
Wow. Knight F3, Knight C6, and D6. Black very worried about Nepo's preparation there. But yeah, Nepo losing the first game just tells you all you need to know about the RCC.
Yeah, Nepo lost the first round. Fabi lost in the first round. This is supposedly a Swiss format where the first few rounds are the easier rounds.
And it reminds me of those tournaments, as I'm going to pull up Wesley's game here, which we haven't yet looked at thus far. He is facing off against the vanquisher, Fabiano Caruana, Lei Kwang Lim. Anna, it reminds me of accelerated pairings. I'm sure you've played in tournaments with accelerated pairings, and probably a lot of people in the chat don't know what that is. So some open tournaments have what's called accelerated pairings, or basically, rather than breaking the tournament up into 2 halves, where if there's 200 players, number 1 plays number 101, and number 2 plays 102. Basically, 1 plays number 49, and often you'll face a GM already in round 1.
True.
Yeah, so not the easiest tournament to play in.
Yes, and all the Rapid Chess Championship weekends have featured some of the strongest super grandmasters in the world. So there's not a single easier weekend. Sometimes it was clashing with the Grand Prix or other very important tournaments on the over-the-board chess calendar. But even then, Hikaru showed up to play, for instance, while he was busy in Berlin. So even when there was a clash, it wouldn't stop the players from competing in the RCC.
Yeah, that's nuts. I mean, the fact that Hikaru juggled Title Tuesday, RCC, and Grand Prix, there's only one person who can manage to do that. Now we're looking at Lei Kwang's game. Also, not the most interesting. It's sort of a classic Queen's Gambit decline position. If you don't mind it, let's quickly. No, I was going to go back to the Hikaru game, but there's just more pieces getting traded there.
So it's leading to. It looks like it's heading toward a drawish position. Hikaru's game.
Yeah, so we'll look back at it if things get more interesting. Let's go for a second back to the Aronian game and see how his recovery from that initial blunder is going along. Well, the eval bar seems to think that black is not, that the worst is behind him.
How did he escape? And that rook on BA that was in trouble and is now on G4. Rook B4, rook G4 somehow was played.
So apparently Queen H4 is a mistake because it allows this rook B4 move that involves black's rook in the defense. Had white played instead Queen H3. And after rook B4, okay, this is not me, this is the engine. There's G5, HG, and Queen F5. And now you can see how nasty this is. And if black plays rook G4, white just goes G3 and the rook is sort of arrested on G4. King G2, rook H1 is coming. This is really, really bad for black. But the way that Paravian played it, he's allowing this rook to get into the defense. Rook B4, rook takes G4, and rook back to G7, Anna. How did it end up here?
That's crazy. It still feels very dangerous, yes, with that knight maneuver jumping to F5. But so far, kudos to Levon Aronian for his resourcefulness with the rook lift all the way to G7. Lack of pawns in front of the king, but he's now got a rook to try to make up for it.
But I don't understand, Anna. Why is he allowing knight D4 and knight F5? What does he see here? I thought that he should have kept the rook on G4, maybe get the other one into the game with the rook E8 and try to lift it to H5, 2 rook lifts in the span of 6 moves. Instead, he brings this rook back to G7. I don't quite understand the zen behind his play. What happens after knight D4? The eval bar similarly bemused. By the way, I'm sorry to keep jumping around. Nepo is completely lost. He's going to have 0 out of 2. The World Championship challenger. He is going down against Pankratov, I think. As I flip to that game, look at this. He's losing his knight on C2.
Goodness me. We have been talking about how difficult it is to score points in the Rapid Chess Championship. There is no easy opponent, but for Nepomniachtchi, this potentially will be indeed his second loss out of the first 2 rounds. It will be so hard to try to qualify after a start like this.
That is just nuts. Rook G3. He's trying one last attempt at muddying the waters, creating chances against Black's king, but he doesn't have a single threat. That bishop on F8 is holding G7. The other bishop is holding G6. And Pankratov is just taking everything here. He's going to take on D4. Nepo's going to resign right here after queen takes D4, I think. Unbelievable.
Goodness me, what a start for Nepomniachtchi. And it's not in the amazing, excellent performance, what a start, but he's losing game after game now for the second in a row.
And yeah, again, that is why we watch the RCC, because this is what happens. And it wouldn't be fun if the top guys always just won everything easily. And these 2600s, Pavel Pankratov, he's 2650. You know what? He's sitting there playing Nepo, and he's not just saying, hey, I'm just going to let Nepo run circles over me. He is determined to make his name known and to make his mark on the tournament. As I flipped back to Hikaru's game, where things are happening just a little bit, but we could still have some sort of a repetition here.
Yes, it seems like a balanced endgame, 4 pawns for each player, rook and bishop versus rook and knight. Funny enough, this is the exact same kind of the material balance or imbalance that Hikaru had in his previous game from the white side of the game and rook and bishop against rook and knight. This one is a better knight and better rook than in Hikaru's first game, though, for his opponent.
Yeah, that's definitely true. He's just got E5, offering another trade of pawns. Alexei could take it and play king F4. So we could have something like this, king F4, rook D5. Everything is protected by black. Or white could also try perhaps playing F5. This is a bit of a more ambitious move, but then he'd have to reckon with E4. And if you take it, you lose your bishop to rook D5. Although I guess this is still fine for white somehow.
Is it? Oh.
Apparently king D4, rook E4, and king D5, and white wins the knight back by force with rook A7 check. Anyways, Alexei gave a check on A7 instead. And F5 check leads to complete liquidation, I guess. Knight takes F5, bishop takes F5. We're going to have a draw.
Yes, this game has been very balanced. Serena versus Hikaru, as Danya mentioned, they have faced each other already so many times in the Rapid Chess Championship. They have their mini battle almost every single time against each other. And this rook endgame, even though black is up a rook, should be leading to a draw with the very active white king.
Yeah, king D4, king C5. Hikaru can take A3. White's going to take A4, and we are going to have a draw. Not a bad result for Hikaru. He doesn't mind. Wait a minute. Just white has to be a little bit careful here.
Not to take with the king.
Yeah, not to get skewered. Yeah, that's it. And, you know, he doesn't mind a draw with the black pieces against someone as strong as Alexei. And we're probably going to have an offer here. Yeah, Hikaru offering a draw. And Alexei will certainly not be unhappy with his result either.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And now we have Abdusattorov against Vladimir Fedoseev on board 3, a very combative endgame. What do you make of this, Anna? Complicated.
Looks very complicated. I would be a bit scared of black's pawn structure from white's perspective. So white has just played king F1, stepping out of the back rank issue. It was going to be rook D1 checkmate otherwise. And the king is heading toward the center to try to stop black's pawn because E3 could create a pass pawn or F3 could renew the back rank checkmate threat.
Exactly. So he played prophylactically. Now he's got the pass B pawn, which is restrained by black's rook. So the question here is whether white can somehow, you know, set that pawn in motion. And I think the answer is no. This bishop on A3 is completely locked out of the game by its own pawn. So white can play rook B8, but then black's just going to move the king out of the 8th rank. And Fedoseev, he has a lots of pawns that he can start pushing on the king side. I don't like this for Noterbeck. I feel like this is really, really dangerous.
Yeah, it does feel like while black can stop the B pawn easily, the D and E pawns of black are especially dangerous here.
Okay, but A5, wait a second. A5 gives white a chance. I don't like that move. I think it gave white a chance to play rook a7 and get that rook out of b7 and start attacking black's king side. He doesn't play it though. Goes g3. And now
g3, and after bishop g7, the b2 pawn is hanging.
Yeah, eventually we might get some sort of a 3-on-2 situation on the king side if white goes rook a7. But with 2 minutes on the clock, I'm starting to get skeptical about Naroditsky's defensive chances.
It does feel very rough for white. That bishop on a3 is pretty much stuck, and he has just been guarding the b2 pawn. The time situation, unfortunately for white, is also not something to be happy about. There's no increment, so you would have some flagging chances. You would be able to try to play for time if you had a bit more time than your opponent, but it's not the case here.
Unless you're playing on Draken.
Yeah.
Then you can get into a rook versus rook in 2 seconds.
Exactly. That was a gentleman move by Andrekin in the previous round.
So this allows e3, which would establish a monster protected pass pawn right in white's grill. I don't know what white is planning against c3. And neither does the eval bar, which is much more important than whether I know what white is playing. The eval bar doesn't know, therefore we know
it's the
trouble.
same, Danya. We know that you are the eval bar here.
I'm the human reincarnation. Yeah, bishop e5. And look at this. You would love to play rook h8 here, right? And take on h7 and skewer the rook, but the bishop's guarding that square. There is no other square for the white rook to go to, so black could even go h5 and basically play for Zugzwang, which is exactly what he does.
Yeah, such a sad position for white, full domination by black's pieces and this e3 protected pass pawn.
And now you just have to find one more finishing move. Don't play this. That would be a terrible idea because after the trade, and now white can go rook h8. And apparently black is still winning with e2, I guess. But oh my goodness.
You can't even blunder here for black. Yeah, that exactly. Shows how big the advantage is if you can't even blunder the rook away.
But apparently just walking the king closer to the b pawn is the fastest way to win. Just king e7, king d7. And white's days are numbered here as Naroditsky trying to create counterplay. He goes b4. But even I think d5 is winning. Fedoshev goes e2. That's also winning. Okay, he's going to make a queen and mate. Yeah. Rook b1 and e1 queen. And Vladimir Fedoshev dispatches the world blitz champion.
He does indeed. Naroditsky made such an impressive event at the World Blitz Championship. Indeed, that was an over-the-board World Blitz Championship very recently. But in this game, he has been dominating, and he was also dominating the backgrounds among all the face cams we have seen. Have you seen that impressive Royal Palace Hall or wherever he is? Look at those columns, Danya.
Man, I think Robert last time or Yasser said that this looks like he's in the Sistine Chapel. Yeah, he looks like he's in some palazzo in Rome. He just came back from eating spaghetti alla vongole, in a plaza in Venice, and now he's just and now just stopped by the Vatican to play the RCC. But whatever he's doing,
it's working. Be there. Wow, impressive backdrop in the impressive endgame by Fedoshev, who's on 2 out of 2. He's the only one so far, the only player so far on 2 points out of 2.
Yeah, Volodya, he's just such a strong rapid player. And here we're watching David Paravian trying. Speaking of impressive endgames, he's up a piece against Levon, who's obviously got these connected passers. 38 seconds for Aronian. Can Paravian win these pawns? Anna, or it's easy to blunder here with white. It's so easy to accidentally let one of these pawns promote. So David has a minute. He should be able to win this. Let's see.
Yeah, with the time advantage in the piece up, but even though the evaluation bar has been showing quite some advantage for white with the extra piece, of course, it doesn't seem that easy in practice to get to those pawns, as you mentioned, Danya, the pawns of Aronian.
No, because the king is kind of awkward for white. You would love to go king e3. Unfortunately, that's illegal. Okay, so bishop f3. What does Levon want against bishop f3? It's equal according to the eval bar. Apparently, the move king e7, the cold-blooded king e7, giving up the D pawn and then shifting the rook behind the other pawn. That is a draw, objectively speaking, but he's not going to make it. He's got 21 seconds. And something tells me David is not going to give Levon a draw.
Yeah, Levon is one of the other super grandmasters whom we expect to be at the very top of the standings, and he is not having a good tournament either. Nepomniachtchi has lost his first 2 games, and Aronian is in a very similar situation almost.
No siree, but look at this. Aronian getting active. David now with 26 seconds. He's got to put a move on. He has to get to the C pawn. How does he win it? Bishop d5. It's so hard to get this bishop to like a4. And now he's down to 16 seconds. He's got to move.
Oof. Oof.
But look at Aronian move, Levon. Oh my goodness, he spent 5 seconds on that move.
There is no increment, so time clearly matters a lot in our Swiss format, and anyone could still win this game on time.
Yeah, but it's going to be David. He's up 5-5. Levon's starting to pre-move, but he's not going to make it. F2, what a move. You can't take it. Rook g1, bishop f1. Rook h3 mate. Getting made in 1. Oh, Levon. 4 seconds. Rook e5 is coming. Oh, queen. King h2. Levon pre-moving. David needs to move. Bishop f5 won a rook there, and he's going to flag him. Oh,
but
my goodness,
he almost
Anna.
did not. Paravian had so much more time, and Aronian almost made that time difference be gone completely.
Aronian did play very fast, but it came a little bit too late. Oh, my lands and David Paravian, a big win. And that concludes, Anna, I think, round 2. What a great way to end that second round.
That has been insane to follow all these games and the time scrambles. As we mentioned in the Saturday's event, there is no increment, makes a big difference. We're going to take a very quick break to make sure that we catch our breath, and then we are back with the rest of the games with round 3 and this very important rapid chess event with the super grandmasters, some of the top chess grandmasters in the world competing. Be right back. The Rapid Chess Championship is brought to you by Coinbase. Whether you're looking to make your first crypto purchase or you're an experienced trader, Coinbase has you covered. Earn crypto by learning about crypto with Coinbase Earn, explore DeFi and Web3 with Coinbase Wallet, and get exclusive rewards when you spend with Coinbase Card, and much more. Learn more at coinbase.com/chess and get $10 in Bitcoin when you sign up and verify your account. Danya, we are here for the Rapid Chess Championship, as we emphasized, presented and sponsored by Coinbase. But who is going to be presenting and sponsoring the Grandmasters that are not scoring points? Oh, we have some struggling participants here today.
Yeah, we've got some, some guy named Jan Nepomniachtchi who clearly it's his first strong tournament. He's got 0 out of 2. Robert has, how did he finish his game already? I guess he made a quick draw in the 3rd round. We're watching one guy who's not struggling is named Vladimir Fedoseev, and neither is Gata Kamsky, who's on 2 out of 2, and they are facing each other. A queen trade already on the board. We've got lots of end games, Anna. Is it just me, or I feel like every game is going to an end game?
Yeah, it almost feels like we are watching a thematic tournament and they were told that they need to be playing endgames.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I'm curious who got a beat. Let me see. I'm curious because he's on 2 out of 2. I'll find that out for you. But let's take a look at this position first. This seems maybe a tiny bit better for white, who's got control over the d5 square. And the e5 pawn is a little bit loose. Even as good as Gata is at endgames, I don't think he's too comfortable here.
Yeah, it doesn't seem anything comfortable for black. Slightly better only for white, but that slight advantage is a very permanent and pleasant advantage here.
Yeah, and Gata dispatching Sam Sebian in round 2, so he's in pretty good form. We saw him make the top 8 last week, losing to Fabi in a very narrow match. So he's getting warmed up as well.
He is, and if I remember correctly, the translation of his username, it's a tiger in a hat. Is that correct, Daniel?
Yes, tiger in a hat.
That's very cute.
I'm not sure what I'm sure that's a reference to some sort of I think like a kids program or something, but I'm honestly not sure what that's a reference to. I'm sure somebody in chat can fill us in.
I would picture some kind of a cartoon for sure. So that is Grandmaster Geta Kamsky's username, a tiger in a hat. And the tiger is doing very well so far. He's one of the 4 players. Only 4 players are on 2 points out of 2.
Yeah, and as Vladimir tries to squeeze this endgame out, let's have a look at our other perfect score matchup. Jospem, who beat Jeffrey with the black pieces. You can look at the final position here. That was the previous round. His reward, you're facing Mr. Paravian, who beat Levon.
Yeah, not an easy opponent. Paravian has also been very consistent with his Rapid Chess Championship participation, showing up every single weekend and also qualifying quite a few times.
Yeah, nobody likes playing him. He's got an annoying style to face. He's got good opening preparation. He has that 4-night scotch that he plays with white. He's fast and he's very tactically alert. He's got that combination of skills that makes him an incredibly fearsome rapid player. In this position, though, he's taking a while. We've got this was actually a Petrov, which you wouldn't think of if you look at this position.
I was going to say, I would have never guessed that.
What Queen D7? What is never seen that move before. And I think it's kind of backfiring. Jospem has pressure on his D5 pawn. And if you take it, and now if you try to be cheeky with knight takes E5, you're going to end up paying the price. This looks incredibly scary. So he does take on C4, and then he goes knight D4, trying to trade as many pieces as possible.
I'm still puzzled by this line with the queen on D7, but he placed the queen there on purpose. I believe. I don't think it was a mouse slip. May not have been the most precise way he played afterwards. Now the queen has taken on D4, so the bishop can finally be developed, but white is ahead in development.
Yeah, and white's pressuring the B7 pawn, which makes it hard to develop the bishop. Currently, Jospem has to figure out where to put, and bishop C3 looks incredibly natural. He's just played it. No question in my mind, Anna, that white is more comfortable, but I like the way Paravian is playing here. He's going to try to get his bishop out. And once he does, it seems like the worst will be behind him.
Yeah, it feels like he finally is solidifying the position. And after a few simplifications, such as the queen trade, he should have no issues. He does have less time, but in such a simplified position, I don't think that it will be an issue.
Agreed. I think he's done a good job here, taking enough time to figure out the most prudent course of action, but not too much time to where, you know, he has no chances to make the rest of the moves in the game. So we'll keep an eye on, this is another potential end game. We'll keep an eye on this game. Shall we continue our tour and have a look at Hikaru's game?
Definitely. Let's check in with Hikaru, who is on 1.5 points out of 2. He has made a draw in the second round with Alexei Sarana.
But I don't think we should look at this because his opponent's too weak.
Just another super grandmaster from the States.
Having a hard time reading. Wesley, first time player? I've never seen him before.
Has a cute cat picture. I like it.
I love that. I mean, I love cats in general, so I've got a
Yeah,
soft
I
spot for that.
agree.
I think
I
Wesley has a
agree.
cat. Yeah, Wesley definitely has a
It's
cat.
his
The cat has
cat.
appeared
I
on
think it
camera.
is. Yeah, I was gonna say that I hope that if he qualifies, of course, we will see his face come to tomorrow, and maybe the cat will make an appearance, because it has been the case at many online events that he has company, he has cheerleaders with him.
I just don't understand. Like, what if you're in a time scramble and the cat jumps into your lap right when you've got 5 seconds against Hikaru? Like, what do you? I feel like I would, you know, I wouldn't be too happy at that.
Maybe at speed chess events, the door stays closed, and only in between games he opens it. I guess it would be the case more with if it's rapid time control, longer time control games.
Yeah, but then what if the cat stands right behind the door and starts purring? I would break down and immediately open it.
I know. So. Yeah, it's a hard one, but I think Wesley has his heart rate should be, and he would open the door even with 5 seconds on the clock. That's what I think Wesley would do.
Well, speaking of 5 seconds, he doesn't have 5 seconds, but he does have 4.5 minutes. Another end game, Anna. This is honestly ridiculous. I feel like every game we're looking at doesn't have queens on the board.
I know. I don't know who was it, whether we need to blame Danny for it as usual, but someone has made this happen, a thematic tournament of endgames. I love endgames personally, so I will not complain.
Well, it is always Danny's fault, so I think we can blame him again. I don't think there's any reason not to blame him, given his very poor track record.
Exactly. All the bad dad jokes and everything bad in general happening is Danny's fault.
Yeah, I'll give him a call during. I feel like Wesley is pretty comfortable here. First of all, he can play rook takes b2, and what you could get here is a trade. Rook takes d2. Now Hikaru would have to play rook takes d2 and rook takes a7 check. But Wesley's got the more far advanced passer. He's got the better king. And the question here would be whether rook d7 is a good idea. It's not, probably, because white is the outside passer. But after king f8, I think the game is likeliest to end in a draw. But
slight passer there, yeah.
Hikaru doesn't take d3.
That's interesting. That he didn't want to go for that endgame. Maybe he just thought that even though there was a slight pressure because his rook would have had the 7th rank, he just evaluated it as it doesn't give him enough chances. But because he didn't go for it, now he's the one maybe who could be a bit worse. Could this be a bit worse for white now?
Yeah, I thought Wesley could have tried c4, but instead Wesley, probably given his time situation, is not in the mood to take too many risks, and I think he's forcing liquidation and a draw. So takes, knight takes c5, rook c7 is going to happen. And now knight a6. Wait a minute. Whoa. Knight a6. The eval bar didn't like that. Rook c4, and the knight is almost trapped. Oh, man, that was a big miss by Wesley. Rook c4 would have led to an almost winning endgame for black. But instead, Wesley going down the b file, giving the knight a way out. And now it looks pretty equal again.
It looks equal. I still can't believe, by the way, Danya, that we might have been censored for what we have said. You just can't speak the truth here. You can't speak the truth.
Well, is this the kind of organization that we want to build, Danny? You're going to mute your commentators for telling the truth? I see.
Well, apparently. We need to continue talking more about cats and blame Danny a little bit less if we want to get paid.
I'm concerned for Wesley's position now. Hikaru's knight is running amok. Rook takes g7 is coming, although the black king is incredibly active and is going to recapture the pawn on e4. So rook takes g7, king takes e4, rook g6. Hikaru's going to play this for a win. He's going to try to prolong the game for as long as possible and try to milk time off of Wesley's clock and eventually go for the flag.
Yeah, and time-wise, he is doing extremely well with this being already almost 3 minutes of time advantage. A reminder to our viewers that the Saturday Swiss has no increment, so you can very well win your games on time.
Yes. And knight d6, I think, is Hikaru's next move. Knight d6, bishop d5. And Wesley just has to be very careful to keep his pawns alive because they are quite weak and they can be attacked laterally by the rook. Rook b2. That's a nice move, though. Getting active, counterattacking f2. Now, the likeliest result is a draw, even with Wesley's time deficit. The position remains quite simple. f5, nice move. And Hikaru will probably end up taking the bishop here.
Is there anything he could try? I'm wondering. At the same time, I'm scared of black's pieces. They are also active. As you said, he was gonna take on e4, trade the bishop.
And now I think it's important to play king e3. If you play king e5, white goes rook g6, and white wins the pawn. And it's still a draw. Don't get me wrong. The 3-on-2 is a draw, but this is something Hikaru can definitely win by flagging. Whereas, and Wesley senses the importance of staying active. King e3, rook e7. There's rook g6. There's e5, and Wesley sacrificing h6, but instead aiming to create a quick pass pawn with e4, which he plays. And now, where is the draw? Rook b8.
So pawn up for Hikaru, but a strong pass pawn for Wesley. I'm worried about his time situation, though, because this is still a huge difference. 2.5 minutes of time advantage.
Look at this line. F takes e4, rook g8, king h2, and now king f2. And there's no way for white, no good way for white to prevent, this sort of the perpetual check. That's the kind of cool drawing pattern.
I guess that's why we see now rook g6 played by Hikaru to make sure that there is no easy way out for Wesley.
An f4 check, I think he wants king g4. King e2 by Wesley, preparing e3. Hikaru's got to be a little bit careful here too. I mean, if he overpresses, he could let black's pawn squeeze by accident. Fe, and now e3 is coming. And black's far advanced passer should give Wesley enough to secure the draw, I would imagine.
But will he have enough time to secure the draw?
That's the golden question. King f1, he goes rook e8, preparing to push the king aside. This is going to be a close. By the way, Jospim and Parabian making a pretty quick draw from that position.
That makes sense.
We might have nobody with a perfect score based on Fedoseev and Kamsky do. We'll switch back to that game in just a moment. Let's see what Hikaru comes up with.
He's still thinking, trying to figure out, obviously, how can he keep some practical chances? Because even though this e-pass pawn should be enough for black to secure the draw, the time difference does make it still hopeful for Hikaru that he can get the win one way or the other.
And I think he's doing the right thing. He's taking his time here, trying to figure out whether he can make a serious winning attempt without too much risk. Because it's much more important in this tournament to not lose than it is to win any one particular game, unless it's the last round and you need to qualify. So Hikaru's not going to do anything dumb just for the sake of taking a risk based on Wesley's clock. He's going to play objectively here. And I don't think that he's got too many ways to stop Wesley from king f1, e2, and therefore he should probably force a draw with some sort of series of lateral checks, for example.
That might be what he is calculating and talking about on his stream, because he keeps shaking his head.
Yeah, he's not going to be too happy with this result. I mean, that's going to be his second draw, but we're only 3 rounds in. It's also not, he's going to have 2 out of 3. That's a pretty solid score.
Yeah,
and
not a bad start. Exactly. Now this should be the moment of the king e4.
Oh, now this is interesting. Can I quickly check into Fedoseev and Kamsky have a drawn position? They have a very similar situation.
What?
He just blundered. Wait, did he blunder? He allowed the pawn to get to a7.
The bar was commenting and screaming win for white.
Where was that win? Well, let's see. Apparently, after a7, instead of a7, rook a7 was the winning move, getting the rook behind the pawn. That was a very hard move to play. And now Kamsky has to find rook a5. He does. With 1 minute on the clock, Fedoseev could try to go for the flag.
So another rook endgame. Oh, he
rook
goes
d7.
to the wrong square.
Oh, and now you can't go back to f5 because white forces the rook trade.
Oof.
And now white can even push the pawn to f5 because it's untouchable. Nope, king e6. Fedoseev misses it.
Oh my, missed chances here by both players for Kamsky to hold, for Fedoseev to actually get that half a point extra on top of the draw, that is to convert it into a full point. Still is a time advantage for Fedoseev, but it's no longer as dangerous the position as it was.
Well, to be honest with you, Anna, Vlad should be able to just take on b5 and flag Gata, who's got 50 seconds, but you can play this position forever. And now king g5 is the only move. Every other move allows white to make progress, but Gata stays sharp. King h6, and now white has no way to make progress, no way to keep both pawns defended, but Fedoseev keeps milking time off of his clock.
And that could decide the game. As we mentioned, there is no increment in the Saturday Swiss format, so you can very well win on time or by a mistake.
Yep, and now he just gets his king back. It's over. He's going to get his king back, and he's going to win black's pawn because Gata can't keep his pawn protected and stop the a pawn at the same time. He had to keep that pawn on b5.
And now it's too late. There is no way back for black. The king will make it to the pawn, and it will be a Zugzwang position sooner or later, or simply that the rook on a3 will be pushed away by the white king on b2.
Exactly. Well explained. And I don't think Gata had any realistic chances in that endgame to begin with. He had too little time, and there were too many tricks and pitfalls to avoid. As you can see, his time about to expire. And Vladimir Fedoseev, 3 out of 3. Apparently his trip to the Sistine Chapel is producing some really, really good chess.
Yeah, it was worth it choosing that as a playing location. It seems he's inspired. He's showing it on the board. 3 out of 3 so far. The only one, and not just so far, that there is no other player that can have 3 points. Am I seeing that correctly?
You are, because the other 2 out of 2 game ended in a draw, Paravian and Jaspa. We're watching here one of the last 2 remaining games. It is Alexei Serrano trying to flag Daniil Dubov in obviously a theoretically drawn position. Rook and knight versus rook is a pretty straightforward draw. Dubov is trying to get to the 50 move rule, Anna. I don't know how many moves they've already played in this endgame. It's going to be very close.
Going to be very close, but white has only 11 seconds, and pre-moves, as much as you pre-move, it still costs you some time. Oh, okay, now the 50 move rule. It had to be the 50 move rule.
With room to spare, actually. That wasn't even
really close. 9.8 seconds. Easy draw. I would have lost it though 3 times in this game while he made it to move 50.
Oh, Dubov is faster than people realize. I just played a bullet match with him the other day. He's pretty quick. So they're on 2 out of 3. We have Fedoseev, who's probably going to face, my guess is on Drake in the next game about to begin. Hikaru on 2 out of 3. I'm looking for Jan. Jan finally won a game. Now, you might remember, Anna, last week, I think Hikaru started with half a point out of 3.
It is true. So it is possible to do the Hikaru way of qualifying, because even though he started poorly last Saturday, he still made it to Sunday's knockout. Well, I mean, made it, and yes, that's Hikaru. Hikaru winning everything that he played that week. So maybe it's not that easy to do the same that he did last weekend, but mathematically it's possible. And maybe some of these top GMs were inspired by Hikaru's performance and will try to recreate the same success. For Nepomniachtchi, it's much needed. He started really poorly this weekend.
Yes, he did. And we do have Fedoseev against Drake, and Fabiano also scuffling after winning the second game. He loses the third to Grishuk. Yeah, you have 50% and you're facing Alexander Grishuk. He's on 1 out of 3, so he's got his work cut out for him as well.
Yeah. Indeed. And before we head into the analysis of this round, let me just remind our viewers that we also have the Junior Speed Chess Championship underway, with the main event starting on April 11th. Make sure to tune in to the Junior Speed Chess Championship, where the world's best young stars battle it out for their share of a $35,000 prize fund and a spot in the 2022 Speed Chess Championship. The first match features Brendan Jacobson taking on Arseny Nesterov in this Monday's kickoff round, which will begin at 1 p.m. Pacific time right here on chess.com. So make sure to tune in, whether on Twitch or YouTube. But there's your appointment for Monday, the Junior Speed Chess Championship. Danya, I believe you could be covering that match. Am I correct?
You are correct. And I will be covering most of the JSCC matches, if not all of them. And, you know, I don't just say this kind of because it's a vacuous statement. I truly do look forward to the JSCC every year because it's this combination of a format that I love. We get all three main time controls, 5+1, 3+1, 1+1. We've got a group of young players who aren't just young, they're also unbelievably strong, including Nihal Sarin, the reigning champion. Tons of young grandmasters, very exciting players. We've got Hans Niemann. We've got some grandmasters that perhaps people in the chat haven't heard of as much, but that doesn't mean they're not incredibly strong. You do not want to miss the JSCC this year. I can sense already from the qualifiers that it's going to be one for the ages. And it starts on Monday, as you pointed out.
I'll be there watching. I'll be there watching if it's not clashing with my own stream, but that's not anyone else's problem if you're a streamer and you need to be live while watching a broadcast. But on that note, let's head back to our event. As much as I want to be talking about the future stars, we need to talk about now the current stars of the Rapid Chess Championship. And we've got Fedoseev on 3 out of 3 playing here with the white pieces against Andreikin.
Yeah, and Dima taking that pawn on c4 and trying to keep it. Black is up a pawn and white is nowhere near winning the c4 pawn back. But you can see what Fedoseev is aiming for here. He's aiming for long-term compensation based on the fact that he's got the bishop pair, number one. Number two, he's pushed this a pawn all the way up to a5, and he could even push it Anna to a6 in order to soften up this long diagonal and get this bishop even more powerful than it already is.
Yes, it looks like a very promising position for someone that is sitting on 3 out of 3.
Yes, absolutely. And Andreikin could play a6 himself. But then white could lift the rook up to a4 and follow up with knight a3. And that c4 pawn, it might be well defended right now, but that doesn't mean it's safe.
Doesn't feel safe at all. And speaking of safety, the black king still needs to castle, so that bishop on from f8 will need to still be developed, and then you castle. That's 2 moves to make before the king will be safe.
No, this is exactly the kind of position Fedoseev loves, and you can see Andreikin taking a pretty significant think. I think he should probably prioritize the development of his kingside, and he should probably just go bishop e7 and castle kingside. The position remains very, very complicated. And as Dmitry Andreikin contemplates his next course of action, let's drop down and take a look at our boards 2 and 3. We've got Amin, who we haven't looked at yet, playing against David Paravian on board 2. Very interesting position, Anna, with double fianchettos almost by both sides.
Yeah, it seemed as if the light squared bishop wanted to go to g2, but ended up on c4.
Yeah, that was his last move. And I think the point is that he's targeting the knight on e6. Bishop takes e6. Is it a huge threat? No, but it could be annoying to face. Ruins the pawn structure.
Yeah, it does give up the light squared bishop, which feels like is an important piece in the structure. But those pawns would be very weak. That is for sure the double isolated pawns. So Paravian is taking his time to decide how to react to bishop c4.
9 minutes to 6. c5 looks interesting, counter-striking in the center, but he might be concerned about something like bishop takes e6, fe, and then the simple knight g5, and it's not so easy to defend the e6 pawn, despite all of the pieces that black has in the center.
And that could be the reason why Paravian was thinking for so long, and then plays knight d5. What is going on here? What is going on here, Danya? So the pin.
Right, so he wins back the bishop, but now his bishop is attacked. He's got to move it back. And once he moves it back, white can still play bishop takes e6, but knight g5 is less of a problem there, obviously, especially if black goes bishop f6. So he's aiming for the 2 bishops. And I quite like this decision by Paravian. Oh, actually, wait a second. Yeah, okay, this is where he's thinking. This happened.
I also like how he has gotten out of a seemingly not easy situation, but his time management scares me. What is he still thinking?
He's got 5 minutes. It's only move 14. Nothing has been decided yet. He has to put a move on it, especially given how quickly Tabatovej tends to play in these games. So pretty concerning time situation for Parabian. There's something he doesn't like about bishop f6. I don't know. I don't really think it matters all that much where he puts his bishop. As long as it's somewhere, he's down to 4.5 minutes. Got to move. Okay.
It feels like he's playing classical chess at this rate, but no, this is the Rapid Chess Championship. He needs to make faster decisions.
And that's apparently what he was thinking about. Bishop b2 to a3. I did not expect that move. He departs from the long diagonal and instead aims for that c5 pawn, trying to get white to get rid of this pawn. C takes b6. c6 is also possible because you can't take on c6 due to bishop takes e6. That would force the bishop back to c8. The position remains very complicated. My worry is not black's position. It is black's clock. So we'll keep an eye on David's time management. Let's swing back to Hikaru's game. Hikaru playing Jospim, who's got 2.5 out of 3. And this is definitely a game that Hikaru wants to win. But according to the eval bar, Anna, he is significantly worse.
Yeah, that evaluation bar, I believe, is supported by white's space advantage and the very active white pieces, the double rooks on the c5 pointing at the c6 backward pawn. It feels like Hikaru may have slightly misplayed the opening or early mid-game phase, because this is a very pleasant position for white.
Yeah, white's got, as you said, pressure on c6, pressure on h5. So at some point, knight g5 could be annoying. Although not immediately, because he would give up d4. The only thing that works in black's favor here, other than the clock situation, is I think the fact that white has a weakness on d4 and Hikaru has very nice control over the d5 square. And ooh, c5.
c5 by Hikaru. If it works, it's a great move because that's black's way of getting out of this pressure.
The eval bar was not a fan of Jospim's 24th move, rook d3, feeling that it's too passive and walks right into c5. And Hikaru's already in pretty good shape here. Rook takes c8 is forced. Okay. Now queen takes c8, rook takes d4 leads to a bunch of trades, and we could get another draw here if the sides continue to trade all of their pieces.
And now it feels like it's Hikaru who might want to get ambitious here and try to get more than a draw, perhaps, with the time advantage and no longer a worse position.
Well, my concern vis-a-vis Jospim's position is, if he plays rook takes d4 after the trade, what if I simply go knight c6 and thank you for the pawn? What is Jospim's move going to be here?
That is a great question, Danya. I don't think Jospim has the answer to it.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's thinking. Okay, so this all just happened. Wow, they all made these moves instantly. And, oh, queen d1 and queen takes h5. So he counterattacks the h-pawn. And I guess he's not worried about the check because the king can just hide on g2 or h2. f6 by Hikaru, allowing a check on h7 and then h5. Oh, that was a mistake by Hikaru.
Yeah, suddenly it looks terrifying.
h5.
Oh my. Oh my. The tables are turning so fast. Earlier it was an inaccuracy by Jospim, and Hikaru seemed to have had everything under control, but he missed this idea, it seems like.
But a very practical move. Hikaru banking on his clock, which is not a bad way to play here. Jospim sometimes is a little bit hesitant in these positions. Queen h7 and h5, it's not an easy thing to assess. It's an easy thing to see, but why are you winning after h5? The reason is because the knight from g6 has to move, and that means the queen can infiltrate further to h8. But with 3 minutes on the clock, even that position, Anna, is difficult to navigate. Jospim, though, he goes for it. Queen h7 and h5. And this is getting really concerning for Hikaru. Knight e7 could also walk into h6 with a huge attack against black's king.
It's such a crazy situation in a way that there's only a few pieces on the board, but you can still create an almost decisive attack against the king of black.
And that, I think, is what Hikaru underestimated here, just sort of assuming that his king is now safe. But you can see he's starting to take his time. He doesn't seem too concerned. But then again, we know what he is capable of, even when his position looks hopeless. You know what his track record is, especially in the RCC. Check on C1.
Exactly. And he's got so much more time. A reminder that there is no increment. So if he survives the position, he's the one with an extra 3 minutes on the clock or 2.
That is the issue for Jospin, who has to continue playing accurately. You cannot afford to lose the advantage because Hikaru will flag you. King H2. Look at how White's king is beautifully sheltered by the knights. Hikaru's knight on E5 is dominated. You can't go knight G4. You can't go knight F3. What can you do here if you're Hikaru? Apparently, you have to bite the bullet and take the knight on G5. But after H takes G6, Anna, huge threat of Queen H8 check, and that is essentially unstoppable.
Yeah, there is no way of defending the G7 pawn, which is what Hikaru will have to accept that that pawn will be won if the knight is gone from G6.
Oh my gosh, and look at Fedoseev, who destroys Andrakin.
Whoa, 4 out of 4. The only player with 100% score.
And look at this move, B2, B3, bishop B2. And I'm curious, says Fedoseev, where that rook on B4 is going. Look at how his bishops dominate the rooks and the knight. Andrakin had to give up the exchange, and the rest is very easy. As the knights are pushed around, Fedoseev wins the B3 pawn and wins the game. What an incredible first half of the tournament for Vladimir. And let's switch back to Hikaru's game. Hikaru finding a way to protect the G7 pawn. 2 minutes now for Jospin.
Jospin, we thought that that pawn was not possible to be guarded. He found a way. The evaluation bar still shows quite a big advantage for White, but only 2 minutes left for Jospin.
And the reason it shows such a big advantage is because of the move Queen C8 or Queen A8, going after the C7 square. The problem for Hikaru is that G7, Anna, isn't his only weakness. He's got to keep this square in mind. He's got to keep this pawn in mind. The knight on E1 is loose and could be subject to a fork. So he's got problems on all sides of the board, and Hikaru must play incredibly accurately in order to avoid losing essentially on the spot. Queen D4 is the only move that stays in the game at this moment.
I think he will play it. Hikaru has found many of the only defensive resources. I think he will play this one too and guard the pawn and try to hold on to a position that is still really bad for Black, but he has the time advantage, and it matters with no increment on in our Swiss format.
And now Queen E4 there was incredibly strong. That was winning essentially on the spot because of the threat of of knight D5 and knight F5. That knight on E1 would have been essentially lost. Jospin going back to G8. Hikaru responding with Queen D4. King back to D7 here. How does Jospin make progress? Will he repeat moves here? He's got 90 seconds. A draw is not out of the question.
I think he might. He might do it because of the time situation, unfortunately for him.
I would not blame him. I absolutely would not blame him.
To save half a point, because if he doesn't find a clear way of converting this, a draw is his best outcome with not much time on the clock.
And I think that a lot of players, they often look at this and say, +4, come on, Jospin, really? Well, when you're the one facing Hikaru Nakamura and you know what he's capable of, you always feel like you're losing against Hikaru, even when you're up a piece. And you can trust me on this because I've been in that situation so many times. Jospin taking the draw here. I wouldn't, a draw by repetition, even though White is winning with best play. A big save by Hikaru, but he's now been nicked for 1.5 points. He's got to start winning in the next couple of games if he wants a sure ticket to the top 8.
And it's the top 8 that matters for the qualification for Sunday's knockout. So far, only Fedoseev is the one that seems that he is in top shape, winning game after game, the only player on 100% score.
Yeah, Vladimir just unbelievable. I mean, his style is so well suited for this time control, explosive, dynamic, with opening ideas everywhere, and he has demonstrated that thus far. We're watching Amin and Paravian. Anna, you called it. Paravian's time might be costing him right now. He's got a minute for the rest of the game.
It's just such a huge time difference, and the position is complex. So it's not something like a rook endgame with 2 pawns for each, where you can pretty much pre-move your upcoming moves. In this case, he still has to be thinking, even if the position is balanced.
And that's a case in point. If you go king f7, you walk into knight takes c5. That takes at least 5 seconds to see. The position is closer to equality than to anything else, although I would prefer white with his active knights and his active queen. But Amin can just play this endgame for an eternity and keep squeezing time off of David's clock.
That's very true. And I think that will decide the game. It's in such a situation with a big time difference, Tabatabai should be winning this game because of the clock.
Agreed. We also have Hess and Caruana. Let's check into Fabiano's attempt to come back. Fabiano on 1 out of 3. He basically has to win this game, but it doesn't look like he's anywhere near doing that. This just looks like a draw. This is just a fortress. There's no way to make progress here with white.
Yeah, the knight is guarding the h3 pawn, but that means you can't activate that piece. You have to be holding on to it before black gets an h-passed pawn.
Exactly. This is going to be a draw. Robert Hess is in trouble once again against Alexei Dreyev. Just shows you how difficult this tournament is. It's crazy hard to even score a single point. And
kudos to Robert for participating, for being so brave to participate and not sit here where we are, Danya.
Absolutely. Although I don't really blame him for not wanting to commentate with, with one of the worst commentators in the business. We have Wesley playing Grishuk here on board 4. Both of them with 2 out of 3. A pretty big game that has... Oh, he wanted the rook!
What? That must have been a mouse slip.
Yeah, rook a1. He must have moused it. But he would have lost this anyway. We had 47 seconds. One of the...
Okay, so I didn't realize that you can't play A8.
Takes rook d2 or rook b2, and then you just take the pawn on b4.
Oh, king of 6, rook b4, bishop e7. Only chance. If you go rook 6 b4, it's bishop e7.
But then rook b8, and then black gives up an exchange, and he's got chances. Vladislav in 4 seconds. How does he win?
Oh my, he doesn't know it's bishop e7. There's chances.
Take e7.
Play rook b1. Play rook b1. If you play rook b1, rook b1 mate. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That didn't just happen. Oh. Oh my God.
I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Oh, and he is just destroyed emotionally right now.
Oh my God.
How?
What in the world? I didn't even see the mate.
Me neither.
Welcome back, everyone, to the broadcast of the Rapid Chess Championship presented by Coinbase. This is week number 9 already, and our Swiss tournament is underway. We have only one player on a 100% score, and his name is Big Fish 1995. That is Grandmaster Vladimir Fedoseev.
Yes, Anna, 4 out of 4, and he destroyed Dmitry Andreikin in the previous round. He's now facing Amin Tabatabai, who's the only 3.5 out of 4, and Vladimir has the black pieces, but we know it doesn't matter. He plays for a win with both white, with black, with green, with yellow. It doesn't matter. He's always trying to win, and that is reflected in his choice of opening, as we have a weird kind of, is this a perk? This was started as a King's Indian, and I mean playing this knight bd2 variation, which is not so uncommon. And normally black goes d5 here or c5 to prevent e4. But Vladimir says, hey, I don't mind playing a perk with with this awkward knight bd2 move, and bishop b5 check, forcing c6. I'm not sure who that really benefits. In any case, this is the position on the board right now.
And now Fedoseev is taking a bit longer to decide on his piece placement, how to develop his queen side.
Okay, so now we have a kind of a Benoni structure, and typically black plays e6 in these kinds of positions, but obviously white can then support the pawn with c4. e6 has been played. Now, will Amin play c4, or will he play something else like knight c4? Go c4.
c4 indeed, he solidifies his central pawn structure. Now for Fedoseev, will he take on d5, or can he wait with that move and develop his queen side?
Yeah, knowing Fedoseev, he likes to keep the tension. My guess is that he'll play a move like knight a6. Oh, he just did.
Good guess there, Danya.
Right. And I mean, it's not so hard to figure that out, because he's going to b4. That is an outpost, which was created when white played a4. The downside of this type of play is that the knight on b4, it might look nice, but what is it actually doing on b4? What is it actually controlling? Not that much, right? All of the squares that it is aiming at are sort of controlled by the white pieces. I think that Amin has a pretty nice position here, all things considered. I would consider playing e5 for black and getting it back into sort of a King's Indian structure. He takes it.
He now takes the pawn and will most likely also develop the light squared bishop. Where does the bishop go?
I would imagine d7, because bishop g4 is a move that you play if you want to trade the light squared bishop. He plays bishop g4. So I guess he does want to give that bishop away for the knight, and then he's going to bring a rook to e8. No, this looks pretty comfortable for black now. Yeah, rook f e8.
It does seem comfortable now that the rook is on e8, so he is offering a rook trade on the only open file, rook a3, to try to bring that a rook to the e file too.
Nice move. Very nice move. Getting the rook to e3. We're going to have another trade of rooks here, I would imagine. And you could make the case that white is the one with the bishop pair, and black is the one with a weakness on d6 that could be attacked in the long run. So the eval bar assigning a small but stable advantage to white here, thinking that the pawn on d6 is something that black has to be very careful about as the game goes on.
And white simply plays b3, connecting the pawn chain and also allowing the bishop to be moved to the long diagonal, or a3 if he wants to go that way.
Yep. So b3. I mean, a6, b5 is a plan here that exists for black, but what does that really accomplish? Not all that much. Things have gotten distinctly slightly unpleasant for black here, Anna, as white also controls the e file.
Yeah, it feels like it should be comfortable enough. At the same time, Fedoshev is taking longer on this game of his than in previous games. I feel like his time management here is not as balanced as in the previous game. So the only issue is that he's slightly going lower on time and now plays knight a6. So it's not as easy for black to improve his pieces here.
No, and in fact, this is a clear sign that Vladimir doesn't like his position, because that knight on b4, it was looking very nice, but now he's, I think, bringing it back perhaps even to e8 in order to protect, add extra protection to the d6 pawn. But you don't play a move like this if you're thrilled with your position. He's clearly adopting a defensive pose, and his hope is going to be that Amin just doesn't have too many ways to make progress. But, you know, white is kind of playing for two results here.
Yeah, I'm playing for two results with more time on the clock. Is quite a pleasant situation. I think Davutoglu is pleased about what he has gotten out of the middle game phase of a game that seemed like was going to be a tough one. It's Fedoshev who has been cruising so far. He's the only player on a 100% score. But as you mentioned, Danya, if anyone can catch him, if anyone could take over, it's Davutoglu, half a point behind Big Fish.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty important game for Amin to try to win. If he can win this game, he'll be on 4.5 out of 5, already well on his way. Really 1 or 1.5 points away from qualifying with an entire, with 4 games to go. And yeah, knight c7, that's where Fedoshev was aiming when he played the retreating move, knight b4 to a6. And yeah, my guess was that he would bring his knight all the way back to e8 so that the other knight could stay in the center. He goes queen d8.
To create some space for his other knight. Yeah, for the knight maneuver. Yeah,
this is what he wants. He wants this c7 knight back to e8 to defend d6. And then this f6 knight, he wants to move it back to d7 and then again forward perhaps to e5 to trade white's remaining knight off. Okay, I think that's a reasonable setup.
And it also makes it more difficult for white to just stay as it is in the position, because black will be offering piece trades that will simplify the position. It's also black who has less space. So when you have less space, usually the trades of pieces favor you, so that you don't have that cramped position, many pieces for few squares.
And change of plans here for Vladimir, who, of course, wanted to go knight d7, but I mean, playing g5 and giving black a nice square on h5 where the knight is very safe. I don't like what Amin is doing here at all. He's weakening his light squares on the king side. He's giving Vladimir essentially permanent counterplay based on the threat of queen g4 check. And how is white going to make progress here? And how is white going to solve the problem of the weak g4 square? That's the question that I have for Amin.
Yeah, not an easy one. Suddenly, Fedoshev finds ways in which he can create threats, or at least makes white's pieces busy too in guarding, for instance, the g4 square, which here is crucial.
Yeah, bishop c3. Making room once again for his knight to continue jumping around through g7 to f5. Knight g1, a lot of fast maneuvering going on here. Knight g1 heading to e2. White is still better, no question about it, but Can Amin create significant winning chances in this endgame? That remains to be seen. Shall we have a look at some of our other top games real fast?
Yeah, let's take a look at the other top players, especially Jospem and Narayanan is, if I'm not mistaken, that Indian led is Grandmaster Narayanan are on 3 points out of 4.
Yeah, so he recovered after losing to Hikaru in round 1 in that rather one-sided fashion, winning 3 in a row in the RCC. Are you kidding me? And now he's got more points than Hikaru.
That is crazy. Yeah, that was the first run game we were following as our main game, Indian led with the black pieces against Hikaru. And as you said, he won 3 games in a row since, and there is no easy opponent in the Rapid Chess Championship.
And Jospem has been very much relevant once again. He's facing off against Wesley. He's got the black pieces, but a nice position. This is what you want against Wesley. He's got a lot of pressure. Wesley playing knight e3 to c4. The idea is to open up pressure on the d6 pawn. Queen back to c7. Is that a repetition? Yeah, so they've repeated once, Wesley repeating twice. And my guess is that Jospem is quite likely to take the draw here once again, although knight e6 and knight d4 seems to give black a pretty nice edge. Yeah, so queen c7 would repeat thrice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see if Jospem wants to take the draw. We'll continue with knight e6.
Or knight takes c4,
yeah, knight takes
c4.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
Well, the key line is here. If queen takes c6, black has this very powerful move, e3. And Jospem, what a gutsy call. He goes for it. F takes e4. Going for the win against Wesley.
Yeah, and for sure he would have gone for it against Hikaru too if he had more time. That was his previous game where he was better, perhaps winning that much of an advantage against Hikaru, but there was no clear way of converting it, and he was much lower on time.
Yeah, I think against Hikaru, he made a very practical decision, given once again that losing is very, very bad in the RCC. It really throws you off. Here, with 4.5 minutes on the clock, he believes in himself. He's much, much better in this position. He's up a pawn. Wesley realizing that he cannot recapture on d6. Jospem bringing his rook to d8. Could take on a4 here, but that's not a relevant pawn.
Yeah, it's all about the central pawns, and White should try to see whether there's a way of picking them up or blocking them, because it feels like that will be a major issue. Queen e1, trying to put more pressure on the e4 pawn and grab it.
Yeah, and Jose, I like this idea of maneuvering the knight from e6 to d4. He plays it. Now, will Wesley snag the pawn on e4, allowing knight d4? He plays rook takes e4 with an exchange sacrifice. What a move. That's a classic Wesley move.
Yeah, he wants to get rid of the light square bishop of Jospem, because in case he had taken on e4 with the knight, black has no intention of trading that piece for his very, very strong long diagonal bishop. He's offering a rook to get rid of that bishop. That's how powerful it is.
Yeah, no, Wesley deciding he has to get rid of it, and he has to get control of the light squares. And Jose, I feel like he was hoping to squeeze more out of the position than he has. Now he's got 3.5 minutes as he brings his king to safety, king h8, just improving his position. Wesley still with a very, very difficult position. He's got almost no moves, but just says, I'm going to take another pawn. I don't need your permission to take your pawns. Knight takes a4.
Still leaving the rook hanging, so it is still an option for Jospem to grab the exchange.
Yeah, and Fedoseev, by the way, I think they're going to make a draw pretty soon. Can we pop back into that game?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a draw. F6 was a nice move. F6 was very important because that gives the king a pathway to protect the F5 pawn. This is going to be a fortress and a draw.
And with that draw, there will be no player left on 100% score, but Big Fish, aka Fedoseev, will keep his first place.
He will, and he's more than happy with the draw. Hikaru, in the meantime, facing off against RCC winner Maxim Matlikov, who defeated Andreikin a couple of weekends ago for the RCC crown. This time, He's got a very difficult pairing at 2.5 out of 4.
Yeah, it just goes to show how strong the field of the Rapid Chess Championship is. Even players that aren't on qualification spots at the moment are paired up against players like Hikaru.
Hikaru's going to win this game. G6 looks incredibly strong. Matlakov has way too little time to handle a position of this complexity. And look at the attack that Hikaru is unfurling on the Black King. This is totally crushing. G6, H6 is coming. Black's knight on C3, a great example of a paper tiger. It looks nice, but it's completely removed from the battlefield, from the central battlefield. So white is going to win pretty easily here.
Yeah, that's a very, very forceful attack on the king side. And as you mentioned, the knight has nothing to do with it. It's almost like a piece up in the attack on the king side.
Yeah, this is a very easy win actually for Hikaru, so we can switch to some of the more competitive games. Let's take a look here. Okay, shall we swing back to, yeah, so Amin's game is still a dead draw, this pawn end game. Although Amin just declined a draw, but that doesn't mean he has any realistic chances. King f7, as long as knight b5 is met with king e7, which you could just see that it is, Black has no problems here. Yeah. And Jospin, he ultimately decided to take that rook, Anna, but white is an incredibly solid position.
With a knight on e4 and a pair of bishops supporting white's structure, it feels like that exchange sacrifice was a really good idea by Wesley, getting rid of Black's light squared bishop.
It was a fantastic idea and very practical. It allows white to play fast. Knight back to e6. So Jospin, he keeps swinging between f4 and d4 based on the situation. Knight f4 looks pretty good here, though. Bishop takes f4. Oh, and knight g5 heading toward e6. Nasty little idea by Wesley.
You can't really stop that knight from going to e6.
Yeah, you're just going to have to take the hit and move the rook away so that at least it doesn't come with a fork. Jospin still with less time. It goes rook a8, offering a trade of rooks. Rook e6, declining it. Wesley keeping his rook active. Should be a draw. I mean, the position is probably closer to equal than anything else. But with the time situation, anything can happen.
After bishop f6. Oh, yeah, it's already confirmed indeed. And with that victory, 3.5 points out of 5 is Hikaru's current score. That's already a second place tie. Obviously, some of the players have not finished their games yet, but looking good for Hikaru and his qualification.
Yes, it is. I switched briefly to our other top game, Dmitry Andreikin, who is trying to dispatch Indian Lad. An important game for Andreikin to win, since Indian Lad has half a point above him. And looks like Andreikin is making moves here, making progress.
He has now traded on h4, fixing the pawn on h5. So in the future, he could, if he can attack it and get that pawn, it will create a pass pawn for him on the h file.
Rook back to b4. He continues poking and prodding. And you're right, Anna. If he can win that h pawn, white will be winning, and he's making progress. Rook h8 is coming. I think he's winning. Rook h8, rook takes h5. He's going to win the second pawn. And these pawns are going to be unstoppable.
Black was able to stop one of the pass pawns, but once there's an h pass pawn too, it's too much to handle.
Completely agree. And 1 minute for Indian Lad. He's actually in time pressure, which I didn't know he was capable of getting into time pressure, given how he's playing against Hikaru.
Yes, true.
Apparently he is. And why are Andreikin and Tabatabai still playing? Like, how many moves is he going to make here?
Good question. Nafatasev is the one with more time on the clock, so maybe he's the one who keeps playing on.
Ooh, and Jospin's game is heating up.
Oh.
And cooling right back down. It's a draw.
There was a slight glimmer of hope that it was going to be more than a draw, but very, very well played by Wesley in a difficult situation. It seemed that he was under a lot of pressure and in a worse position, where he found a promising exchange sacrifice that gave him back the chances to hold.
Well, guess what, Anna? Wesley declined a draw. Now, I don't know if that's because he didn't see it or because he actually wants to flag him. I think he's actually going for the flag here. You could see him declining the repetition. Something tells me, though, Jocelyn with 22 seconds, that is enough. And he declined another draw.
Oh, my. But now is it pawn push?
Now, watch out, Wesley, because you're going to lose this. I've played Jospem hundreds of games by now, right? Jospem is one of the most underrated speedsters you'll meet, and he is incredibly fast. He's not going to lose this game, and he's actually playing for a win now. Wesley is just not experienced in these time scrambles, and he's got to be very careful not to lose this. Oh, and he lost it! What did I just say?
Gosh.
Oh my God, he has to trade rooks into a lost pawn endgame. Wesley should have taken the draw.
He didn't want to accept the draw. He stepped out of the repetition. He declined the draw or not seen it, but stepped out of repetition.
And now it's a lost pawn endgame. Black's going to go king e6, king f6, opposition, and Black is going to win the h4 pawn. This is an easy, easy win. And Jospem with plenty of time to do it, and king g3 is coming. And Wesley is going to resign. A heartbreaker there. And what a game by Jospem. Oh,
that is insane. Danya, you said it, that Jospem, even though he was down on the clock, about 22 seconds left in a rook endgame, you said that he was not going to go down, that he was going to hold it, and he took his chance as soon as Wesley blundered. That was crazy to see how he wasn't going to lose in the first place, even though he had less time, and then he even managed to squeeze a win out of that rook endgame.
Unbelievable. And that has major implications for the standings. With that win, Jospem moves to 4 out of 5. And he is right on Big Fish's tail. Fedoseev still in clear first with 5.5. We've got Amin and Jospem with 4 out of 5. Hikaru on 3.5. So that's going to be a pretty big game. My guess is that Hikaru is going to play Fedoseev. Because Fedoseev and Amin have already played. Fedoseev and Jospem, I think, have already played. Although I'm not sure. Okay, we're about to find out because the next round is about to
exactly.
begin.
The games are about to begin. I am still under shock. If we could just go back to the moment where Wesley refused the draw, just to rewind what happened. Everything happened so quickly.
Well, first Wesley loses a pawn because he's trying to flag Jospem, which means he doesn't want to make 50 moves, right? So he plays g4 at the wrong moment. He gets skewered. Okay, it's still a dead draw. Like, Black cannot make any progress here. But at this point, Jospem starts playing for a win. He tries to get White's rook off of the 6th rank. And Wesley, after rook g5, okay, plays. And here he makes the blunder, king g2 and king g3, allowing rook f5. And White's rook, that's the crucial part, has no more escape. So you have to go for the rook trade. And unluckily for Wesley, this is actually a lost pawn endgame.
That was just crazy, Anna, to witness. So fast. With the speed of light, Jospem not only holds, but even scores a full point against Wesley with less time on the clock.
And I was wrong. Jospem and Fedoseev have not faced off yet, so they are playing on board 1. And Hikaru is playing Amin Tabatabai on board 2. 2 crucial matchups to determine the top 5 going into the last 3 rounds.
Fedoseev here castling queenside, so going for an opposite side castling position. And as you mentioned, with the current situation, after the draw of the previous round for Fedoseev, there is no player on 100% score, but in terms of the performance, Fedoseev seems to be in great shape to qualify. Now, this game still is extremely important for Jospem just as much, because he is trying to take over the first spots and guarantee his qualification even more so.
And yeah, Fedoseev is not somebody who ever plays for a draw. I mean, he will take the draw if it totally guarantees first place, for example, but otherwise he is not interested in quickly ending the game.
Yeah, certainly not. So I'm expecting a huge attack, counter-attack, dynamic position here from this middle game, and both players playing for a win.
Yeah, we have a Rouser Sicilian. We already have a trade. We already have a trade of 2 minor pieces. So
maybe not as much of a huge dynamics, but
no, but I mean, if White plays e5 here, that could lead to some very explosive play in the center. The question for Black is whether he can get away with castling. My guess is that e5 Well, no, e5, there's d takes e5, f takes e5, and now knight f6 to d5. Classic idea, right? Where if you take the knight, you give up the bishop with check. And if you take the bishop, then black recaptures with the knight with a completely fine position. So let's see what Vladimir or what Jospin decides on here.
It's going to be interesting to see, and also how long he will spend on this decision. He's falling behind on the clock.
Yeah, I would take white here. I would prefer white by a little bit, but you know, Jose is very experienced in these Sicilian structures. I think he feels pretty confident. E5 now has to be calculated by both sides. E5 is the sort of principled way of handling this, but Fedoseev brings his rook up to d3, preparing to triple on the d file and maybe to lift the rook up to the king side if black castles to that side.
Seems like a very interesting and resourceful decision, multi-purpose move, bringing the other rook to d1 and also allowing the d3 rook to rover over to the king side. Can we also quickly take a look at the other top board pairings? I was wondering, Tabatabae's game?
Absolutely. Let's switch to Hikaru versus Amin. And Hikaru already with a better position out of the opening. Amin was beating Hikaru last week only to make a few crucial blunders. That was one of the most epic RCC games we've ever seen. That was just up and down, back and forth. Lots of amazing ideas found by both players this time. And it looks like Amin just is a bad position. Weak pawn on a5. Hikaru with excellent bishops. And this double fianchetto is killing everybody.
Very powerful bishop indeed, and it has no counter. It would take quite some time for black to move the knight away and try to exchange it with bishop to f6.
Yeah, nobody seems to be able to face this line. d4 is coming. It's unstoppable. Hikaru wins these positions 99 times out of 100, literally. I mean, once you get a position like this against him, where you've got a bad weakness on a5, he's got his initiative. You know, it's virtually impossible to hold it together.
Yeah, too many threats, lots of pressure on the a5 pawn and the potential of opening up the diagonal of the f1 bishop. Tabatabae is taking his time to try to figure out how to get out of all these threats at the same time.
Yes, he is. Down to 6 minutes, 7 minutes rather. But you can take 3-4 minutes here in the blink of an eye. Back to b8 he goes. So he's trying to take the sting out of the discovered attack against the rook, which Hikaru, by the way, could still play. But my guess is that he's going to play bishop c3, intensifying the pressure on the a5 pawn. He just wants to win that pawn. And, you know, once he wins that pawn, black's position starts to crumble at the seams.
Yeah, that pawn is extremely important. And slowly but surely, once white wins that pawn, white should be able to create a passed pawn later on in the endgame on the queen side.
Hikaru taking his time here, weighing his options. He's got a very, very comfortable position. We also have an interesting matchup between David Paravian, whose time management has been his main Achilles heel.
Yeah, I'm so surprised. Paravian has participated in every single Rapid Chess Championship so far, and he has done very well in many of them. So he's clearly not new to the event and not new to the format, but today it seems that he's struggling taking faster decisions. Ooh. He goes for the, his opponent goes for the exchange sacrifice, a typical Sicilian exchange sacrifice.
Yeah, speaking of faster decisions, that took Andrejkin about 2 seconds to decide on. And bishop b5, the follow-up, attacking the queen, queen e1 is probably the only move. And then Andrejkin has to make a decision. Does he go for the materialistic approach, knight takes g4, or what I think is more likely, does he go for rapid development, knight f6? The eval bar seems to think that exchange sacrifice is premature, that Andrejkin does not have enough play on the queen side to warrant this sacrifice. But no, he plays knight takes g4. He wants the material, Anna.
He takes it, and let's see if Paravian will find the right response here, and also how long it will take for him to come up with a response.
And the right response is bishop to d4. There is a key subtlety, which I think Andrejkin might have missed. If he goes e5 here, white has the counterattacking move f3, And now the knight can't really move because of bishop takes e5, but instead, David throwing c4 in the mix, paving the path for the queen to reach c3. I think that might be his idea.
It seems promising as well. Black is still so undeveloped in terms of the knight having to move from g8 so that you can castle. And this bishop, as you pointed out, is a loose piece. So queen c3 is a big threat here.
Yes, it is. Although queen c3 could, I mean, black has options after queen c3. Even queen takes g7 is not such a dangerous threat in certain situations because of bishop f6. For example, if black were to play bishop e2 here, which I'm not saying this is the best move, but just for the sake of illustration, the queen is literally trapped here. You can't take the knight because it's protected. So there is
it's true. It's a poison pawn.
Yeah, there's stuff to watch out for here for David, who's down to 3.5 minutes.
That's just such a big time difference, and nearly 5 minutes up for Andreikin here with the black pieces.
In the meantime, on board one, Fedoseev and Jospin trading pieces. E5. No, Vladimir is crushing him.
Wow, e5 was threatening mate on h7, so f5 was forced, but this way white has won the d6 pawn.
And now queen e2 is an incredibly powerful move, which creates multiple threats. The point of queen e2 is that rook takes d6 meets with rook c3. Mm-hmm. Now, the black rook is skewered, so black has to take on d1 and play queen back to f8. But now in comes white's queen, and black has a losing ultimatum. Either he goes f6 and gives that pawn up, or he gets mated with the rook lift. And the confidence with which Fedoseev is playing here is absolutely unbelievable. Queen e2 essentially wins the game for white.
I think he will find it. He has been in such top shape. He was the only player on 4 out of 4 and is still leading half a point ahead of the rest of the field. He's taking his time now. He knows that this is a big moment. It could win him the game in a decisive advantage situation.
And believe it or not, it could even qualify him even with 0 out of 3 in the last 3 rounds. I'm not saying he's going to get 0 out of 3. He might get 3 out of 3 at this rate. He plays queen e2, and that took him 30 seconds to find. Unbelievable performance here for Dmitry Fedoseev.
We give him new nicknames too. But wow, that is crazy. If you're saying that he could even lose the last 3 games, mathematically he could still qualify.
Well, 5.5 out of 9, we know usually qualifies 1 player, and Fedoseev probably has the best tie breaks. But my guess is that he might take 1 or 2 quick draws in the last 3 games just to put it in the bag. And this is essentially hopeless for Jospin. I'm not sure where Jospin went wrong exactly. It seemed like he was still okay here, although things were starting to get a little bit dangerous. Now he played this move, queen c5. That was the mistake because it lets white drop back to d3, aiming at the h7 pawn. And rook f8 merely exacerbated the situation. h6, fearless move, was the only way to keep black in the game. But this had already gotten pretty scary. This is all happening.
It has gotten all out of control, unfortunately, for Jospin, and the current situation is that all the pawns of black have been dropping.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to look at this and say, wait a second, black is only down a pawn, but there's another problem that compounds the material deficit, and that is the fact that the queen on f6 is so unbelievably active. And it leads to this idea of pushing this h pawn all the way down to h6, creating an anchor's point on g7 and forcing black's queen to engage in totally passive defense. White is pretty straightforwardly winning. My guess is that Vladimir is quickly going to push his h pawn down the board right about now.
Yeah, he has made the one quick step on the queen side as well. Actually, more than one quick step. I thought he was just going to place the king on b2 and then push h4, h5, h6. He also plays a4 to restrict the queen side movements of black. But even if he doesn't go for the h pawn push immediately, black cannot do anything but go back and forth with the queen.
No, and I think now is the time to play h4. He's made all of the improving moves. Notice how patiently he's played. He goes h3, so he's not in a hurry at all. You know, he's really squeezing the most out of the position. This is exquisite endgame technique by Fedoseev, who has been head and shoulders above his competition thus far. Jospin might resign here in just a couple of moves.
It's a fully dominant queen endgame for white, only a pawn up, as Danya highlighted, but with such a strong active queen on f6 and the weakness of the e6 pawn, as well as the black king, there's always checks and patterns with which white would pick up yet another pawn. G4, so he's going for a different idea.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, h takes g4, f takes g4. He can push his g pawn all the way up to g6. Jospim out of desperation, trying to get his queen active with queen e4. I think h4 was a little bit more accurate, but this shouldn't spoil anything. And now queen d8 check and queen d7 check. Oh, this is interesting. So the winning sequence here, it goes to a5. Also winning, because you can never leave the e6 pawn. White takes it with check, and then white takes f5 as well.
Yes, unfortunately for Jospim, he cannot ever leave that situation. His king is in stalemate. You cannot move the king away from g8. Even if he had pushed the h-pawn earlier, it was just going to drop the h-pawn. So there was no way out of that situation for the king. And
here comes the h-pawn. Now he shoves it up the board. And the idea is that after he gets it to h6, he can follow up with g6. And it's winning every which way. Betasev is going to win another one. He's going to be sitting pretty on 5.5 out of 6, queen h5, and now just queen g6 check is winning easily. Yeah, Jospim offering the option of capturing with en passant, so the pawn could take on h6. Actually, Betasev takes it with the pawn. Well, queen g7 check forces a winning pawn endgame. That also works. That also very, very well works. Yeah, just queen g7 check is the easiest. Hikaru, in the meantime, he is continuing to grind down. I mean, Tabatabai is up a pawn for no compensation. A wild position in the Draken game. Where do you think we should go next, Anna? I think either of those games. I was just wondering if we will see the end of this one before we switch. Indeed, yeah. Now there's a resignation by Jospim. As you mentioned, it was queen g7, the clearest way of converting that endgame into a completely winning pawn endgame. So this one is Hikaru with the white pieces against Amin Tabatabai. This is all about who is going to be taking the second place. At the moment, it's Tabatabai on shared second. And bishop f6, that's a very nice move because, yes, he ruins his pawn structure, but now the one redeeming thing for Amin is the fact that he has this incredibly strong bishop on c6, which is controlling the diagonal. Hikaru has a lot of weak light squares, which are exacerbated by the fact that the bishop on d3 is not fianchettoed. So Tabatabai has managed to get himself in the game. He's got serious drawing chances here. Which is huge considering what was his position like earlier. We thought that it was pretty desperate, the situation for black. I still don't really see it happening, though. I think Hikaru is the world's leading expert in milking your clock in such situations. He will find every little chance to force you to think. But it's going to be close. Certainly, at least a lot more possible than what it would have been like earlier with simply the pawn down on the queen side. Now it's 3 versus 4, the only remaining pawns on the board. I do think, though, that, as you said, Danya, Hikaru is so good at not just that he has an advantage in the position, but also more time on the clock. The combination of the two, I believe, will give him the full point. You're absolutely right. Queen g4 check, king f8 for now. I mean, still holding on. Queen c8 check, that is a fork, but he drops the queen back to e8. Now, the bishop endgame is probably a draw objectively, but it's going to be impossible to hold it with a minute and a half. What Hikaru could also go for, he could take on e8 and play bishop d3 to e4. That forces the rook to move aside to c5. And the rook endgame, again, is a draw, but nearly indefensible given the time situation. But if Hikaru takes any longer, he might be the one experiencing some problems with his clock as well. Yeah, and he has not made a decision yet whether to go for the queen trade or not. He's trying to figure out which one gives him better practical chances, of course. I'm also keeping an eye on David Paravian's game. David seems to be experiencing decisively acute time pressure. He's just going to lose on time in the end game that he has. We can check in quickly on that game. Yeah. Look at the time disparity, 2 extra minutes for Draken, and now a winning endgame of 1 million extra pawns. 4 pawns as passed pawns on the king side for black. I thought at one point Parabian was winning, but he just didn't have enough time to puzzle out the complications.
It's so hard. He has been lower on the clock in every single one of his games in today's Swiss.
And this time he pays the price for it. E4, that pawn rumbling down the board. It's totally unstoppable. Bishop F. Oh, no, don't play Bishop F6 because then Bishop takes F6. Oh, knight B4 wins a piece.
Very nice. The bishop is hanging, and so was knight C2 check the threat.
And after rook E8, the bishop is hanging once again. Both bishops are hanging, and it's official, a resignation. Now the big game. Hikaru against Amin. Hikaru can win a second pawn here, but he's going to have to deal with very nasty counterplay. But he goes E4, intercepting the bishop, an excellent move, and Hikaru is going to win the game.
Yeah, this is what you predicted, Danya, that with the bit of extra time and also the pressure with the extra material, now it's even 2 pawns up, not just that one. He's going to convert it into a full point.
Yeah, this is pretty easy now. King H2, avoiding the bishop spin. F5 is never possible because the bishop hangs. And now Queen E3. This time the bishop endgame is winning for white with 2 extra pawns and a passed H pawn, which is the devastating one. F4. Queen C7 check. But then there's bishop D7. So he repeats once. Okay. Hikaru's struggling a little bit here to make progress. And Amin is super fast. Uh-oh. Oop. Look at how fast he's playing.
Yeah, and luckily there was no pre-move there and the queen was hanging with the king moves.
G5. Can't take it because of the mate on H8. Incredibly alert there. One last try by Amin, but the checks are not going to lead anywhere. The king's escape is very prosaic. Check and check is mate. Boom. Queen G1 is mate. Oh, Hikaru misses it, but it's
he did not see it. He plays another strong move, of course, Queen C8.
And now he's going to see it. Yep. Queen G4. And it was never in doubt. That was a pretty smooth game. Amin goes down, and Hikaru is essentially going to guarantee himself qualification. He's on 4.5 out of 6. And now in second place. So we've got one last game remaining, which is about to be a draw.
This is our final game with not enough material left on the board. It's a draw. So far, Fedoseev is the one player that has been in stellar, absolutely top shape. He has been killing it. But can he do that against Hikaru? Because I'm suspecting that's our next round pairing, Fedoseev against Hikaru for the first place.
Yes, it is. It is our next pairing. But first, I think, Anna, we're going on a quick break, right? Just to give the players a breather.
Indeed, they need a breather. Probably we too need a breather. So we're going to take a very short break, and then we are back with, I believe, Hikaru Nakamura against Vladimir Fedoseev. Don't go anywhere.
Go King G4.
Wait a moment. Knight back to F1. Amazing. Oh my God, you have to.
Oh, stalemate!
He should have made a bishop. He could have flagged him with a bishop.
Oh my gosh.
Does David Anton? Oh, David Anton is slightly worse timings. Fedoseev still qualified.
Wait, no.
He didn't.
He didn't. And David Anton qualifies. The stalemate gets him through.
This is unreal.
Oh my gosh.
He surpasses Fedoseev, poor Vladimir, by less than 1 tiebreak point. And
oh my goodness.
Auto Queen on. Kovalyov is cursed in this tournament.
Yeah, he got checkmated by Anish Giri in an unlosable position.
How do you draw this endgame? Oh my gosh. What? How is this even possible?
Welcome back, everyone. This is the Rapid Chess Championship presented by Coinbase. Week number 9 already. Danya and myself are covering the event for you guys, and we have seen a spectacular performance so far by Big Fish, but his biggest challenge up to now, I believe, is coming right here, right now in this round. Big Fish versus Hikaru. Did we get the pairings? What?
The game already finished.
The biggest challenge already ended, Danya?
Yes, it did. It was a draw.
Berlin?
What a surprise, a Berlin draw. I've never seen that before in one of Hikaru's games.
No, I was looking forward to that game so much.
Yeah, this would have been an amazing battle, but I think it makes practical sense for both players. Fedoseev goes without saying, he's basically qualified now. For Hikaru, he was firmly in second place, and now he sort of solidifies his position in the top 8. So a sensible outcome, but one that is disappointing to the fans and the commentators for sure.
Yeah, and as you highlighted, definitely it makes sense in terms of the qualification spots. And because of the qualification spots, we do need to address that. Yes, the top 8 is what matters. And for tomorrow's knockout system, we will only have the top 8 players from today who will be back playing a different time control and a different format. Danya, how would you explain the major differences between today's event and tomorrow's?
Well, there's two things. First of all, it's just 8 players. It's single elimination. So if you lose your game, you are out, and there's a standard bracket. And then the other big difference is that it is 10 plus 2, as you indicated. It's not 10 plus 0 as it is today. There is a 2-second increment. So there's still time scrambles. There's still flag fests, but it's not quite as acute as it is today. And some players who struggle with time management in the 10 plus 0 format, David Paravian, for example, has had his struggles. He is incredibly strong in the Sunday knockout because you just have that 2-second increment to cushion yourself if you fall behind on the clock. And
that's all he needs. He has qualified various times and he did well in many of the Sunday knockouts, who also did very well earlier in the Rapid Chess Championship. And we said he's leading with the Grand Prix points is Fabiano Caruana, but I don't see his name among the top 8. How is Fabi doing at the moment, Daniel? How many points does he have?
Oh, gosh, I'm looking for him in the standings. Fabi has 3 out of 6, so he's on 50%. He has to basically run the field in the last 3 rounds. I think he has to win all 3 of his games, which is not impossible. Nepo, by the way, also on 3 out of 6. And Nepo is playing Indian Lad. Fabi is playing Pavel Pankratov, who is a very tough opponent in the RCC. Yeah, I mean, 3 out of 3 against 2,600 plus GMs is going to be a very difficult ask for Fabi, but not impossible. So I'll pull up his game. I'll pull up Nepo's game. He's got a French, does Fabi. Nepo's the one I'm worried about. I don't see him winning this position.
It seems too solid to even keep fighting. He's got a bit less time and a very solid, simplified position.
And he's just down a pawn. I mean, knight takes e5, rook d5. Oh, he's going to win it back, but he's not going to win this game. And with another draw, his maximum is going to be 5.5. I don't think that's going to qualify him given his tie breaks.
So Nepomniachtchi, who qualified various times and did well in the knockout various times, may not make it if he cannot win his last 3 games. And it certainly seems like this endgame, unlikely that he can turn the tables on Narayan here.
Although Narayanan needs to be a little bit more disciplined than he was against Hikaru. He's going to have to take a little longer. And he is. I think he's made his adjustments after that initial game. And we will see if this game indeed ends in a draw. That is by far the likeliest outcome. But yeah, so Levon and Andregan have a pretty colorless position. We also have Jospem against Noterbeck, another endgame. One in which Jospem is a pawn down for no compensation. I think that last game against Fedoseev really hurt Jospem.
Yeah, he was doing so well up until then, Jospem, but the loss against Fedoseev, it seems like have had more than a 1-game impact, unfortunately, for Jospem. He still is in a qualification spot, so if he doesn't go down in this game, but that's a big if with the pawn down, can he hold this?
Well, he's a pawn down. Now he can take on, in fact, I think you probably should take on f6 and bite the bullet, get into a pawn down rook endgame. At the very least, he's got Black's pawn structure is really damaged. So White's obviously got pretty good drawing chances here, but again, with no increment, these kinds of endgames can be played for 30, 40 moves, and eventually something is going to give. So I'm going to put it at around 50-50 in terms of the ratio between the drawing chances and Black's winning chances. Not exactly what Jasper wanted with White out of the opening.
Yeah, certainly he has gone wrong. Shall we check back with, I was going to say some of the other top games, but then I remembered Hikaru's game ended in a quick draw against Fedoseev. So no, we cannot check back with the top board. And Andreikin's game you mentioned, wasn't that complex? Can we check the current situation?
Complex, but very boring. Complex, yes, but this is a classic Andreikin position. Look at every piece is on like the same square as its counterpart, and the pawn structure is identical.
It is identical, and we do have the bishop queen duo on the long diagonal for Aronian, keeping that f3 knight tied down. You can't just go and hop to d4 or e5.
It's funny. When I don't know why I'm thinking of this now. I had a question for you. If you ever played anybody who fell asleep at the board.
Actually, I did. I have. How did you know, Danya? I believe it was in a IM round robin in Hungary when I was still like trying to get my woman IM or woman GM norm, and I think my opponent was a taxi driver. His full profession was a taxi driver, so he was really tired during the games, and he fell asleep for a couple of minutes during our game. I had no idea what to do. I was feeling a bit awkward. I don't want to win on time. Luckily, he had quite some time, so it wasn't like I was gonna flag him. But I felt like maybe I should wake him up.
Right, that's always the dilemma. I've definitely seen a couple of players fall asleep. Over the one time, my good friend fell asleep during a game, and nobody knew whether to wake him up. Like, what's the right thing to do? Right? On the one hand, it's his fault. On the other hand, you want to be nice, but his opponent probably doesn't want to woke it up. Now, I never fell asleep at the board, which might surprise some people in the chat. But there was one time where I was playing Jan Timman in the last round of the Politiken Cup, which is a really strong open tournament in Denmark that happens every year. I think it is a different name now. But I was playing Timman in the last round. I had a decent event, but I was watching, I was binging a show during the tournament. So every night I would watch 2 or 3 episodes, and my addiction got progressively worse. So I'd watch 2 or 3 episodes, and then 3 or 4, 4 or 5. And my bedtime got later and later, 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The last round is earlier, right? Last round is usually the earlier than all the other rounds. It was like at 10 a.m. And I couldn't contain myself. I was like, man, I'm playing Timman. This is an important game. I'm playing a legend. I need to get my sleep.
Yeah.
But I ended up watching the show. I was finishing the show, and I was watching it until 8 a.m. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even. 8 a.m. I was like, I can't even go to sleep because I'm going to oversleep the rounds. So I ended up staying. I pulled an all-nighter before a classical chess game.
Oh my, against Jan Timman.
Against none other than Jan Timman. I'm Black.
He was one of the best players at his peak, and he was top 3.
And he's still good. He's like 25-70. This was maybe 6 years ago, so he was a little bit younger. I come to the board. I'm exhausted. I got myself a coffee, and then on move 5 or 6, I made a move. So I made a queen d6 to g6. And I look at the board and I start like seeing things like, did I just play queen f6 or did I play queen g6? And I'm like, I'm not going to be able to make 15 moves here without blundering something. So I offered to draw, and to my great relief, he accepted. And I wanted to tell him, like, if you'd known the details behind this, you would have beat me in about 5 more moves.
Oh my. Quite a story of the all-nighter.
That was the only time I ever pulled such a shenanigan. Yeah.
I'm glad that you got away with it with that draw. Or maybe it would have been a very funny game had he not accepted.
In the meantime, I think Levon is probably the one pushing for an advantage here.
Yeah, and he's clearly not falling asleep. He's very focused.
Extremely. And knight takes a4 is a pawn, but Andreykin, I think, has prepared knight b4, forking the bishop and the pawn and the knight is saying. So knight c3. Okay, Levon went knight c4, and now knight b4 anyway. Wow. Whoa. Wait, isn't there bishop takes f3? No, then there's bishop b3.
Knight e3 by 11, so the bishop is hanging. What is happening here?
Pawn up. Levon's going to be a pawn up, like bishop f7. Knight takes a6, knight takes a4, and black is just going to have an extra pawn with winning chances. Dmitry, knight b4, he played instantly. I don't think that was the right move. I think he should have just taken. And white is a little bit cramped here. No, I guess that's not the move. But something went wrong here for Dmitry, and he slipped into a really uncomfortable position.
Yeah, it feels like he has gone wrong, but is now trying to keep the position somewhat more complex, which is really hard, obviously, when there are only a few pieces left on the board. So he didn't go for the immediate simplification, but the pawns are being taken regardless. He couldn't defend the pawn on a4.
Right. King f8. And, I mean, black's got chances here. Now, objectively, I would imagine that this is still a draw. White should be able to hold. But, again, it's a 50-50 position, limited time for Dmitry. And this is a pretty important game for Levon to win, because Levon's on 4 points out of 6. Dmitry's on 4.5. He doesn't mind a draw. Levon does.
Yes, that makes quite a difference when you're half a point ahead. He would like a draw, but can he actually achieve it? Roughly same time in terms of the time management, roughly balanced what they have left on the clock, but the extra pawn here, can he push that pawn, or does he have to go for the trade?
Dmitry seems to be doing a good job here. Yeah, if e4, I think the worry for Levon is that after knight d4, the knights link up. The king has the possibility of blockading the pawn with king e3. And it might look like black is doing great after f5, but let's not forget that white's knight now has this e5 square. The king can blockade the pawn, and white can undermine the pawn chain by going g2, g4. So it's not all bad for Dmitry, and he's got very serious strong chances here. As Levon dipping below 3 minutes himself, takes knight c5. This was Dmitry's idea. This should be a draw.
And it seems to be working out very well practically. Yes, now it feels a lot closer to something that is a holdable position. Speaking of holdable or not, I saw that Nepomniachtchi's position was nothing but a draw. And in the chat, if I'm reading that correctly, he had actually managed to win it, that endgame. Remember that? Can we just check real quick the final position?
We absolutely can. Let me pull up his game. I am shocked. That looked unwinnable. But again, it's Nepo, and it's Indian lad has not played well in these endgames. He got mated.
Oh my
lands. How do you, this is just a dead draw. But Nepo, he activates his rooks. See, that's why piece activity is so important. Rook f4, rook c5. No, but white is up a pawn. Just go h4. He does. f6. Oh, I see what the problem is. So Nepo goes e5. Now, if you move the rook away, then you give up f2, right?
Yeah.
So Indian lad said, no problem. That drops the rook back to f3. Guess what? Check, check. The rook moves to the first rank, and you get checkmated. Whatever you do. Okay, that actually blunders the rook, but
that is
move,
so
rook
pretty.
h1 and rook g1. And the rook on f3 is arrested. It is trapped, so you can't move it away to give the king luft. Unbelievable. Nepo
what
is still
a turn
in the
of events. Jesus, I did not believe first when I saw in the chat that Nepomniachtchi won the game, but thank you guys for letting us know. We did miss, because we thought we just left a drawn endgame. It indeed was not a draw. What an incredible turn of events, and then Nepomniachtchi with a chance to qualify still.
Unbelievable. And this game, Noterbeck seems to be well on his way to converting that extra pawn against Jose. So this one, not all that interesting. We'll keep an eye on it. I want to check into Fabi's game against Pankratov. Since Nepo won, maybe it's in fashion now to win worse endgames. Fabi is worse. He is scuffling this tournament big time. Bishop e7, allowing rook a1. Oh, Fabi's going to lose again.
No way. Fabi had to win 3 out of 3 to qualify. That's what we were counting in terms of his chances.
He forgot to play rook a2, and now his rook is going to be trapped after a3, and the pawn's going to promote.
So it's good news for Nepomniachtchi. What happened in this round? He still has a chance to make it to tomorrow. Fabiano, the player that has done the best so far in all the previous Rapid Chess Championship, and he played every single weekend. He made it to the knockout 6 times out of 8 participation. He resigns, and I think mathematically that means that Fabiano Caruana will not qualify to tomorrow's knockout.
It's exactly what that means, and he might actually withdraw. And that is why we watch. I always say this, if the same player won the RCC week after week, then there would be no point in watching. It wouldn't be interesting. But it's the unpredictability of it. You don't even know who qualifies. I mean, Hikaru very much reliably qualifies, but other than Hikaru, you have no idea who the top 8 will consist of. And that's why it's so interesting to watch this tournament. We're watching here Dubov locked in a crazy position against Amin. He's got his king on an f6, 1.5 minutes for both players. It looks really good for Dubov, but he's looking for the finishing touches here. How does he finish off the black king?
Good question. And if we can just show white played king to f6, I thought it was a beautiful pattern that white is threatening checkmate. Checkmate in 1.
Beautiful, where both rooks are participating. One of them is pinning g7, the other one defending the queen. So Amin had to escape closer to the center, but Dubov now down to a minute. He's probably considering a sacrifice on h6. To me, that doesn't look like it has a good chance of working. Black has too many pieces that surround the king, and you can rarely hunt the king down in these kinds of cases. Check on d4 instead. Amin covers it with the queen. Aronian, by the way,
break through.
Aronian failed. No, he lost. No, he won. Sorry.
He won.
I mean, Andreykin.
He had a pawn off.
No, but look
You
at this.
scared me.
But Anna, look at this. It was a dead draw. Andreykin
How did he win?
King f2, and it's a draw. Knight takes f5, knight c3, and black doesn't have enough. He's going to lose one of these pawns. And instead, Dmitry, with plenty of time on his clock, played the howler, knight g3, allowing knight takes f5 check, forcing a transition to a pawn endgame, which is winning for black.
Oh my
God.
Blundering that with 1.5 minutes on the clock is very painful.
That's unreal. I mean, the only move was king f2, and according to the eval bar and according to what we see here, white should be able to hold this position. My alliance, that's crazy. Back to Dubov's game. And it's
so Ryan has overtaken the 3rd place. He was half a point behind Fair Chess, that is Dmitry Andreykin, and now he has got 5 points, half a point ahead of Dmitry.
Well, all sorts of crazy things are happening. Jose is now the one trying to win the game. He's somehow gotten this into a equal material rook end game where white has just won a rook h6 check. And black blunders a rook.
How did
rook
that
f6,
happen?
rook d6. Oh my gosh. What aren't we seeing in this round?
Goodness me. What were the last few moves? If we can just rewind very quick. I know there's so much going on, so we don't have time.
Oh, rook c1. Oh, black is completely winning. Even here, black is winning. But he allowed white's rook to get active somehow. And then Jose got sudden counterplay against black's king, forced the trade of the bishop, and then got his rook to b8, won a pawn, and then won another one. Wow. Jose Martinez swindling Noterbeck. And I think that concludes the games from this round.
That has been such an incredibly ups and downs turning tables round, including Nepomniachtchi's game. That seemed like just a draw, and he managed to win an end game, a rook end game that had no poison and no venom in the position. Fabiano Caruana goes down. He no longer has a chance to qualify. The players that are happy include Vladimir Fatasayev and Hikaru Nakamura. They both drew against each other in this round, a very quick draw. Levon Aronian winning against Dmitry Andreykin was an important one for Aronian. There's still so much left to play for, but only 2 rounds remain. Danya, who do you predict will we see the top 8 as it is now, or do you think there's anyone from 9 and below that will make it to the qualification spots?
Right now, the cutoff point is Andreykin at 4.5 out of 7. Grishuk in number 9 with 4.5 out of 7. So I think we're going to see the usual layout where 5.5 out of 7, 5.5 out of 9 will maybe qualify one person maximum with the best tie breaks. 6 out of 9 is going to get you in. So Fedoseev is in, Jospim is in, Hikaru is probably going to make another quick draw to guarantee it. We're going to see a bunch of draws at the top. The question is going to be, will Wesley, will Grishuk, will Jeffrey hold on to their spots?
That's
Hikaru
the main
already
question
drawing.
indeed. Already? Wait a second. The round has just begun. Can we check?
Wait, Anna, let's take a bet. What do you say, Berlin, Queen's Gambit, or something else in Hikaru's game? Because I haven't seen it yet.
I was going to say Berlin, if you tell me that it's already a draw.
Berlin. Berlin draw.
Well, they played against each other so many times in Berlin, so it's very fitting. Aronian versus Hikaru in the Grand Prix. That was a derby that we witnessed many times, not always leading to a draw. And the reminder that tomorrow's knockout cannot have draws like that because one player will be eliminated in every match all the time.
That's exactly right. And if there is a draw in the 10+2 segment tomorrow, they just moved to a blitz game. So if you're facing Hikaru, for example, it is not in your best interest to force a quick draw because you don't want the time control to be shortened.
Yeah, you don't want the time control to be shortened, and you might not want the colors to be switched either because the colors will matter too. It's only a one-game match, very exciting format, the Sunday knockout.
Wesley and Fedoseev going down a theoretical line that I'm familiar with in the King's Indian where white wins a pawn, but black in return gets some compensation, the potential to put the knight on d4, perhaps to undermine white's knight with b7, b5. If I remember correctly, this is supposed to be insufficient compensation, but nonetheless pretty good drawing chances. Fedoseev, a little bit surprised that he's chosen a line where he basically has no winning chances. At the same time, Anna, he could lose the last 2 games and still qualify. But for color's sake, he definitely wants to remain in number 1.
Yeah, that's a good reminder that in the knockout stage, the starting spots are determined by how well they did today. So top 8 qualifies, but you want to finish as far ahead as you can because then you will be the player choosing the color, the starting color in your match.
That's exactly right. Board 2 is Jose against Dimitri. I think Dimitri's strategy is probably to draw this game and play solid. I mean, obviously, he wants to win if he gets the chance. But I don't think he minds a draw here with black. And then the last game with white, Dimitri is going to go full steam ahead and try to win. 6 out of 9 is going to be enough to qualify. So Jose doesn't mind 2 draws himself.
Yeah, I think that's a good prediction. For Jospim, it's a good result, and for Dimitri, he should go all in with the white pieces. That's very likely that we could see it happening, or Jospim wanting to put pressure on his opponent with the white pieces. So who knows? Maybe he will be playing for a win.
We will see. We have another fascinating matchup. Oh, Nepo against Grishuk. I love this. Grishuk with 4.5 out of 7. Nepo on 4. So Nepo has to win the next 2 games at all costs.
That is a lot of games to win in a row, but he also had to win the previous one, which was like a rook-hand game that you would never believe that anyone can win. So considering that that's already in the bag, I think he can do it.
I agree. I mean, like you said, if he won the last game, he's slightly better here out of the opening. He's got the 2 bishops. It's a French, but Sasha has established a very nice knight on d5 that's supported by the fianchettoed bishop. He goes rook c8, attacking Nepo's bishop on c4. And now once Grishuk defends the h7 pawn, there's going to be this nasty idea of knight d5 to b4 using the pin.
That idea is a very important one. Indeed, Grishuk guards the h7 pawn with queen to h4.
Wow, aggressive. Knight b4 now a definite threat, and Nepo dropping his queen back to c1, preparing bishop g5. Some positions the queen could get in trouble.
And Grishuk is half a point ahead of Nepomniachtchi, so let's not forget that he is playing for his qualification spot too.
Yeah, he can't afford to lose. In fact, neither. I mean, obviously Nepo can't afford to lose. That goes without saying. Interesting position here. Not exactly sure what to recommend to Sasha. Maybe knight e5, getting the other knight into the center. Hard position to get a handle on here for sure.
Sash is spending quite some time on this decision. Obviously, not an easy one to make, but there is no increment, so he shouldn't burn too much time if he wants to keep his chances alive.
Definitely. There are other important games at the top. We've got Amin and Jeffrey, both of them on 4.5 out of 7 as well. Crazy position here. Knight has just jumped into c4, offering a trade, bishop c4 dc, which does, Anna, open up the d file for white. So takes and rook d6 looks pretty darn tempting.
Looks very tempting indeed to double those pawns and open up the 5 for the rook. But Tebe at the same time is considering other options. So what are the alternatives here if he doesn't want to take?
Probably queen a2 should be calculated. The thing is, queen takes b2 loses a piece. The bishop takes c4.
Mm-hmm.
Knight takes b2. I mean, if this works, then I know nothing about chess. Rook b1, bishop takes c3. Rook c1, rook c2. This looks horrible. So this would force black, I imagine, to go bishop c8 to e6. But I think this was promising. I mean, deciding against it, takes on c4. And I think Jeffrey's idea is to meet rook d6 with queen b6 to b3, when queen takes c5 allows queen takes b2. So black is still okay for now, but it looks a little bit dubious for sure.
Yeah, it does look dubious, and Jeffrey has a bit less time, but now it's Tebe who's spending again longer on this decision. Rook d6 seems very tempting. Any other candidate moves here for white? What are the moves he's calculating?
I think knight d2 was a move. Bishop d6 is what he goes
for.
Yeah, that makes sense. He just hunts for the pawn.
Yeah, immediately going for the double pawns.
And bishop f8 is not a desirable. Black does not want to give up the fianchetted bishop here. That creates long-term weaknesses, and Jeffrey just jettisons the pawn. He's in trouble. He's down a pawn, no comp. And white has control over the d file. Rook d6 now looks pretty good.
Yeah, tough spot for Jeffrey. He does have the pair of bishops, but it doesn't feel like he's gonna have any compensation, especially with the queen that's stuck on a6.
Right. No, this is very problematic. And back to our top board, Fedoseev seems to be doing a pretty good job of holding his own in this endgame against Wesley, who also doesn't actually have to win. If he draws, he's going to be on 5 out of 9. Sorry, 5 out of 8. He's going to have a shot in the last round, but he definitely wants to try.
Yes, with the extra pawn, he's playing for a win. At the same time, we've got opposite color bishops on the board. So in case the rooks were going to be traded, now it's one pair of rooks disappearing from the board, but I think the other rook will be kept on the board. At least Wesley would like to keep a rook on the board to avoid a very, very drawish endgame.
Yeah, the moment the rooks are traded, you can shake hands, well, proverbially. But rook c3, there's a nasty little move, b5. He goes rook d3. Nice move, infiltrating to d7. So he's going to win back the pawn on a7. And the problem for black is if you allow the rook to infiltrate the 7th rank, there's also going to be bishop b3. And black is going to have problems with his f7 pawn. So if I were Fedoseev, yeah, he goes rook d8. That's a good move.
Rook d8 to force the queen, the rook trade. Rook d5 offers the trade on the d5 square so that at least white will have a pass pawn.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that this is okay for black. White's going to have a major pawn phalanx in the center. And even with the opposite colored bishops, that could still be an overwhelming force.
Well, it seems like the lights have been turned off in the Vatican since we were just looking at the beautiful backdrop that Vladimir had with the Royal Palace or Vatican as some impressive columns. No longer we can take a look at that masterpiece of architecture artwork that was behind him.
The Pope just came back. So the lights needed to be, diverted from Fedoseev. I think Jospim is winning against Andreykin. He's got look at the time disparity. He's got 4 extra minutes, 4.5. But Jose, he has a massive attack in this endgame. I thought, whoa, he's repeating moves. Queen e7. Whoa, he makes a draw. But I thought Queen e7 is just crushing because knight e6 is coming.
He
King
again
G8
has Yeah, sorry, I didn't cut you off.
No.
Danya, just looking at the clock, I was like, he again has much less time than his opponent. So he's the one with the better or winning position, but much less time.
Yeah, I think what played a role in his decision is the fact that he's now on 5.5. And I think he's confident in being able to not lose the final game. But I thought that he's got a pretty easy game here. He's got 3 minutes left. That's not the same as having a minute against Hikaru. A surprising decision, but we'll see if that pays off for him.
Yeah.
I've switched us to the Nepo Grishuk game where Sasha seems to have stabilized the situation, eliminated Nepo's bishop pair. And if anybody's better, it's definitely Grishuk here.
Grishuk, who is also half a point ahead of Nepomniachtchi, so obviously for him too, it's huge if he wins this game in terms of having the chance to qualify to tomorrow's knockout.
And now knight coming to c4, you can't really stop him because b3 gives up the c3 pawn. Well, we know of Nepo's capability to pull out the full point in such positions, but his opponent this time is no 2600. It's Alexander Grishuk.
Yeah, and even though his chess.com rating shows 2600, we know that that's not his actual rating or level.
No. Okay. Knight coming to c4, and now e5, and Nepo's finger is slipping from the wedge. He blundered b2. Ooh! He blundered b2, and then the knight coming to d3. What is he doing? He had to go knight b3. I thought that was the only move.
Do you think he mouse slipped, or what's the knight doing on c2?
I think he just blundered the pawn. I think he just blundered the pawn. He's done this before on the RCC. And once that pawn collapses, his whole position collapses. Because now c3 is falling. The knight is coming to d3 with a fork. This is totally winning for black all of a sudden.
Wow. Turn of events, and not the right turn of events for Nepomniachtchi, because if he does not win this game, he will not be able to qualify. Who will be able to qualify is Alexander Grishuk. He'll be 1.5 points ahead of Nepomniachtchi.
If Grishuk can win this with black, then he can even take a draw in the last round with white.
True.
And essentially ensure qualification. I don't think in the RCC that anybody with 6 out of 9 has ever not qualified. So we might eventually have a tournament like that, but this doesn't seem to fit the bill. A5 by Sasha, forcing the knight back to c2. And then black's knight could even move in back to b2 and migrate to d3. He goes knight a2, does Nepo.
Yeah, such a set square. Such a set square for the knight.
Just f6 to protect d5. All of white's pieces are going to be biting on granite. And it's a matter of pretty straightforward technique. But Nepo, he's trying to create counterplay with f4.
So he opens up the f file and also the diagonal for his queen and bishop.
Okay, but can you just take another pawn on a3? Grishuk prioritizing piece placement, rook d7.
Was he afraid that the queen was going to be given up for the 2 rooks?
I think he might have been, or he might have been worried about queen d6 in certain positions. He's just improving his position. Nepo is so paralyzed here. Although maybe Jan can try to get his knight to d4, knight b3 and knight d4. I would try to do that if I were white. Queen back to f2 instead. And if Nepo pulls this one out, I don't know what I'm going to say.
It looks like such a desperate situation. Material done, and also his pieces are tied down.
a4 is a very nice move, fixing the pawn on a3. Grishuk isn't even in a hurry to capture that pawn. He's just sort of improving his position, enjoying his life. Rook a2, another sad move.
Oh my. Yeah, knight on c1, rook on a2.
Rook d1. Okay, rook d2 also crushing. No, this is over. Grishuk is not going to let this one go. He is not going to let this one slip. In the meantime,
sorry, Daniel, I was just going to ask you if this is our last game of this round that counts for the qualification, or is there anyone else still playing?
Wesley is still playing, but this looks like it's a dead draw. Wesley's got the passed pawns on either side, but he is not going to be able to promote them. King d6, I think. Fedoseev is a fortress here. There's no way to make progress. at all.
It
King
shows
H6.
the issue with opposite colored bishops for the side that is trying to convert. You can't really break through on the dark squares.
No. King H5. Yeah, and the moment you go G6, Black parks the bishop on G7 and prevents you from making further progress. It is a draw. And Vladimir with another very solid result. Let's switch back to the Nepo game because Grishuk on the verge of winning. Knight takes G2. It's over. Look at this. Fork. Bang.
Everything is hanging. I think Nepomniachtchi will most likely resign here, and it's official. Alexander Grishuk wins. His chances of qualifying have massively increased with this win with the black pieces, and Nepomniachtchi mathematically already out.
Yeah, that is a very rough loss for Jan and a rough tournament as he started 0 out of 2. He recovered a little bit, but much like Fabiano Caruana, just unable to keep the positive momentum going. Okay, and there's another important game, Amin against Jeffrey, both of them on 4.5. A draw is not great for either of them, but it doesn't eliminate them. A win in the last round would be big for one of these players. Can Jeffrey hold this pawn down endgame? I think he can. I think he will, and he also has a bit more time. So luckily for Jeffrey, it's unlikely that Tavatibeg will be able to play for time. He'll just try to make attempts, of course, move that can improve White's position slightly back and forth, but with precise defense, there is no progress for White here. King D6 would be a good try here, I think. If I were trying to trick Black, I would go King D6, hoping for Rook takes G5, Rook E8 check. I would have gone Rook E8 check and King E7. That's obviously still a draw. No, but now White has not a single attempt because the moment you move your Rook away from the E file, there's Rook E1 check.
Yeah, unfortunately for Tabatebe.
Don't lose. Rook E7, Rook A1, and already White is worse. So it's a draw. The draw? Yeah, there's going to be a repetition of moves, I think.
And with the draw, both of them will be on 5 points. So with a win in the last round, that could still be a chance for qualification.
Rook E1 check? What is he doing? King H7? Or Rook E6. Rook E6, and Black's going to be the one to win the pawn. I have no idea why Amin is playing with fire here, but okay, he's going to make a draw. Rook F5, King G8. And a repetition is inevitable. Yeah, Rook F1. Yeah, Jeffrey is the one flirting with the idea of flagging him, but no, he's got way too much time. How's Hess doing?
Oh, is his still? His game is still on against Kamsky.
He's one of the last remaining games. Let's see if he can pull this out with 30 seconds on the clock.
Kamsky started well enough, but now he's on 3.5 points.
He blundered Queen takes G6. Oh no,
Kamsky blundered the blunder.
He missed Queen takes G6, forgetting about the pin, but Hess is spending way too much time. He's spending 10 seconds per move. And I think he's going to flag here, unfortunately.
Robert is on 3 points at the moment.
Not bad. 3 out of 7. He's going to move to 50% if he wins. But Gata now taking his time as well. 50 seconds for him. Hess is obviously much faster, but can he surmount this big time deficit? I mean, E4, great move. Robert taking over the initiative, Anna. He might win this one.
If he had the time, I'm afraid, because the position... Or you think he will have enough time? If he's checkmating, he will have, but he was down to 16 seconds.
But he's winning Bishop E5, and now he's threatening Bishop takes G3 and Knight E3, and I think that leads to checkmate. Oh, even better, Knight H4. Is that better, though? F3?
Ooh,
no, Knight H4 lets him off the
G2.
hook. Knight H4 let him off the hook, but got him now with 20 seconds. Oh, and who's going to get this endgame? Hess is so much faster, though. I think Hess is going to win by flagging. I know it sounds crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but I think Robert's going to flag him.
Oh, goodness me. Robert with less time, but better flagging chances, according to Danya. I trust you. I think you're right. You know Robert better than anyone at this rate. So I fully trust your evaluation. And now the time is even.
Yeah, no, this is easy too. This is not even close. Gata is just way too slow.
Robert giving a check there at the end that hangs the knife but wins on time.
You could see the exasperation in Gata's expression, but he has to speed it up in those time scrambles. It really destroys Gata's chances in the RCC. Although he has qualified before. One last game, one last time scramble. Sevian trying to hold this against Paravian, and I think he's succeeding.
It's an extra pawn for black, but lots of checks are coming in, and white has more time, slightly more time.
Oh,
I don't even know who has more time.
David keeps refusing queen trades, and he's going to flag. Oh, there was a mate there. Oh, David manages to take the queen, and he wins. Sevian fails to recapture it. Oh, David wins on time.
Whoa.
Lands.
Oh my. So David again in with a very good chance to qualify, as he has done it at previous occasions too. Goodness me, these last few games with the time scramble, especially Robert's game, he was winning on the board, but he had much less time and he couldn't find the checkmate. But in the end, he managed to flag Gatakamsky.
And Hess moves to 50%. Round 8 is in the books. We just have one more round, Anna. Oh my goodness, buckle your seatbelts.
Everything is at stake. Only a few players are guaranteed so far that qualification spot. I feel like Fedoseev, obviously, we need to highlight. He's a point ahead of the field. But the rest of the squad, I guess it depends on the pairings too. And what's going to happen to those that are on 5 points at the moment?
Well, it's going to be really close. Fedoseev Aronian, my guess, is going to be a quick draw. Anna, I'm going to leave you to drive this for 15 seconds. I just have to run to the bathroom. But
take your time. Take your time.
Right back. I'm going to leave the top game open for now.
We're gonna.
Actually, no, I'm not. I'm not going to the bathroom.
Give me a second.
No. They will not let me go to the bathroom. Levon offered a draw. No, Fedoseev offered a draw. Now Levon offered a draw, and Fedoseev accepted. Good thing I timed my trip well.
Yeah, so let's see. This game is that
Ooh, what a position. Wow.
I'm happy to commentate on this one. Yeah, solid, very solid. Was it the French exchange, or how did they get into this particular?
It was the French exchange. I will be okay. 15 seconds.
Take your time, Danya. I hope this game will last a bit longer. We've got Hikaru with the white pieces against Sasha Grishuk. Both of them will qualify with a draw. I think that mathematically is the situation, and for that reason, I don't think either of them will need to try to play on. This is a symmetrical position in the French exchange variation. At the same time, just when I said that neither of them need to try, Hikaru pushes c4, which instead of keeping the position symmetrical and balanced, it will lead to an isolated pawn structure. Once the d pawn is traded for the c pawn, the remaining pawn on d4 for white is a central pawn that has its pros and cons. It's structurally weak, but it does give white more activity for his pieces. So with c4, I feel like there is an intention by Hikaru to play on, not just offer a draw or take a draw, but he wants this to be an actual game. I'm happy to see this. I am happy to see that we don't have a quick draw, at least in this one. No more Berlins. It was a Berlin draw in some of the earlier rounds and some of the earlier games of other players too. Of course, it counts a lot when it's for qualification. So whether you are guaranteed a spot in tomorrow's knockout, that is always a big question. I think for Hikaru, maybe he qualifies even if he loses. My maths is horrible, but he's doing very well also for tiebreak points, I think. So maybe it's a game where he just can freely play and the outcome does not matter that much. But a reminder that for the spots in the knockout, who is going to be your opponent in the quarterfinals and whether you have the white pieces in the quarterfinals will depend on the spot you take in the Swiss format. I think I have now a co-host. Danya, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to
we don't have a draw.
You did an excellent job. We don't. No, Hikaru's playing this for a win.
Yes, and, that's great to see.
That's crazy. Now, I also am terrible at math, and I'm having a hard time calculating whether 6 out of 9, I feel like 6 out of 9 has to qualify you, because right now, 9th place is 5 out of 8, Jeffrey. And Dmitry Andreikin is right outside the cut at 5 out of 8. He has to win. So my guess is that we're going to have the usual layout. 5.5 out of 9 is probably only going to qualify the highest tiebreaker, probably only one player. And then the lowest cutoff to guarantee your qualification is 6 out of 9. But we'll see. We will see. Shall we have a look at some of the other top games?
Of course.
And Wesley already drawing his game. Ooh, that's dangerous.
Ooh.
Wesley drawing top of the buy. I don't know about that, Anna. I felt like Wesley should play for a win, because 5.5 out of 9, he might believe in his tie breaks, but there's never a way of knowing whether your tie breaks are the best.
Yeah, that is a decision that he might regret. You're right. If that's already confirmed, he made a draw. It's in the books, and he's hoping to have the better tie break among the other players that will be on 5.5. We shall see whether it's enough for Wesley, but I also highly doubt it. With such a current situation, so many players on 5.5 or potentially making it to 5.5.
I don't know about that, Anna. I mean, we'll see. Maybe it'll be rewarded, but we've seen, I think, somebody do that in one of the first RCCs, just taking a really, really quick draw and then, realizing the fault of their decision. One of the players who could make Wesley regret this is Daniel Dubov. If he wins, that would be really, really bad for Wesley, because Jospim's tiebreakers could be higher than Wesley's, and then Dubov would surpass him at 6 out of 9. So a pretty important game for top 8 implications. What do we have going on here? What are your thoughts on this position?
Looking good for White with a space advantage for sure. He's grabbing even more space with c5. At the same time, I was hoping that the queen side stays as it was, because it looked like it was good to keep some dynamic factors in. The c5 makes the position even more closed. But I guess he's just banking on the huge space advantage that he has both in the center and on the queen side. He can push on the king side as well. So there's a lot of things that White can play for.
Well, and I was going to play devil's advocate here. This reminds me of the time that I played in Pine. So basically, I love you, Yasser.
Are you summoning your host for tomorrow's show? The knockout will be hosted by Danya and Yasser.
Yes, exactly, Anna, exactly. So basically, oh no, but if Black had to play b4, this is a sign that White's hands are fully untied for action on the king side. No, I agree with you completely. This looks really, really cramped and really unpleasant for Black. Now, it's sort of a calm before the storm situation. It's like the skies are gray, you know what's coming, but right now at this very moment, Black is still solid. The problem is Dubov is going to prepare g4 and then f5, and you can easily see how Black could get rolled off the board on the king side. And I think that's why Jospim just played f6. He wants to create a little bit of space for himself, and he wants to slow down the progress of White's pawns on the king side. So really bad position, tall order to defend this against Daniel Dubov, but we'll see if Jospim has it in him to hold this position together.
He has to hold it if he wants to qualify. And as for Dubov, he is in a must-win situation. His tiebreak will not be enough. So a draw for him is the same as losing.
Yeah, and we got a couple of people 4.5 who are still playing. Jan, to his credit, I got to give him some credit. He's still in the tournament, even though he knows he can't qualify, but he didn't withdraw. He's playing it until the end, and I always admire that. So, okay, so they're repeating moves right now, but how much do you want to bet that Dubov doesn't take the draw here?
I think he will not. No, he has to play for a win.
There's no way he thinks his tie breaks are that good. I mean, knight f3, g4. I mean, there's many ways that White can play this. I like what Jospim has done here a lot. Bishop on h7, queen on a6. They're both aiming at d3. Dubov repeats again, and he's made a draw.
What?
No way.
Why? How is it that both Wesley and Dubov think that their tie breaks are enough?
Well, somebody's going to be wrong. I mean, maybe Dubov is right and Wesley's wrong. Wesley's right and Dubov's wrong, but I don't see how all of them could qualify. But maybe
Dubov,
they can. Because
maybe they have checked it, but it's so hard to calculate the tie breaks in advance, because it also will depend on some of the results and who will you tie with, who will have the same amount of points.
Here's the thing. This is a huge game because Andreykin and Jeffrey have both 5. If both of them draw and both of their tie breaks are better than Dubov's tie breaks, then he doesn't qualify. Right now, Dubov is in 7th place and Amin is in 8th with 5.5. Serrana has 5.5 and he already hasn't made the cut. So the result of this game is going to define a lot. Maybe Dubov, consulted his resident mathematician and he told him, hey, you can draw. I don't know about that decision though. For Jospin, that's great. He's guaranteed himself qualification.
Yeah, what a turn of events in terms of who is happy about the tie breaks and who might not be. I'm surprised by Dubov's draw because he had the upper hand in that position and he could have played on, and even later he could have offered a draw if he had waited for the other games.
Oh my! Whoa! Andreykin just blundered.
What?
What was DC? And Bishop, wait, no, there's no way this works for Andreykin.
Oh, he thinks that his pawn is strong enough?
No, there's no way. I don't believe it. And the eval bar doesn't believe it either, but there's no way this works. With Bishop D8, Bishop E5, Rook C1. Rip.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case.
I mean, Bishop B7, I can see how Andreykin could think that he still has chances here, but the pawn is not going anywhere, Anna. And Black could start pushing his passed pawns. A5, B4, the game is over. Black is going to win this. What a wild sequence here where Dmitry, okay, he was a pawn down, but he's got compensation. He's got the 2 bishops. And then he goes Bishop F4 in DC, probably just kind of losing his composure there. And Jeffrey is thinking after King G2, but he plays E takes F4. And I guess Jeffrey decides that the 2 pawns up obstacle at Bishop endgame is also winning. He's probably right. Although that's always
Goodness
risky.
me, this D takes C6, I still can't believe that Andreykin has played it. He might have miscalculated or blundered fully what was going to come out of that line.
My guess is that he was also annoyed that he was down a pawn with white. Something happened earlier this game, which we didn't see. And so the plan here for Jeffrey is to create passed pawns on both sides of the board, but it's not necessarily winning. I've seen lots of these types of endgames where you think, I'm just going to play F5, and then I'm going to create a pass pawn here, and then I'm going to overextend the white pieces. But it's never that easy because white can actually use his bishop to try to prevent black from creating a passer on the king side. So the eval bar is not convinced that this is totally winning here, and I'm not either. Whoa. And Andreykin could have just played Bishop F7 and forced Jeffrey to go G5.
Because did now he not.
Goes F5, but Bishop H7. Bishop H7, and Jeffrey will have to lock up the king side.
Yeah, I think Jeffrey realized that he was shaking his head right after F5.
This is a really, really strange game, and this is going to be a draw. That's it. King D3, white is a fortress.
What a missed chance. And at the same time, with the tie breaks, it still might be enough. I'm not even sure what's going to happen here with the tie breaks now.
No, but Bishop D8 is really elementary and Rook C1, and it's very clear that white is absolutely zero way to make progress with this pawn. I am very confused. And this is going to give Dmitry and again, I think Jeffrey had a chance there. If he goes to H5, maybe he can go H5 and try to sacrifice a pawn in order to create a passer. I would at least give that a shot.
I think he should, and I mean, he might be calculating that now. B5 first.
He might do it later. It's not. There's still some tricks here that Jeffrey could try. He could advance his pawns to B4 and A4. It's definitely a draw with best play. But let's see if Jeffrey can trick Dmitry in this endgame. Wow.
A4. So at the moment, they are both on 5 points. If it's a draw with 5.5, it will solely depend on the tie breaks. Who is going to make it?
There will be a huge group with 5.5, and it's all about the tie breaks. This RCC is all about the tie breaks. So we'll wait for this game to finish, and then there will be the moment of truth. As it stands right now, at the moment, Jeffrey has 19.25 tie breaks. Jeffrey does not have good tie breaks. Andreykin doesn't have great tie breaks either. His tie breaks are even worse than Jeffrey. So both of them actually might not qualify, and Dubov might have made a good decision. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe they knew it. We were surprised to see the early draw by Wesley and then also the decision of Dubov to agree to a draw in a better position. But in the end, it seems to be working out for everybody. They knew it better than us. That's why they are the players and we are the casters. Shout out, by the way, to one of the players that made it very confidently. Congratulations to GM Jospam, who is with us in the chat here on Twitch.
Big fan. Jose is always very consistent, very dynamic player. His style is really, really good for the RCC and a well-deserved qualification. He's actually in the second spot right now, but if Hikaru wins, or if Sasha wins, then they will knock Jospam over to third place, where he certainly doesn't mind being. That's it. This is a draw. King B1 and King A2. And, one more thing that Dimitri has to avoid. Do not allow H5, but he's not going to. He's just going to anchor his bishop to H5. It's a draw. It's official. And we're about to see whose tie breaks are better.
Let's see who is going to make it. So far, it seems that Wesley and Daniel Dubo will be happy, but we will need the final confirmation on that once the results are in. Hikaru's game, at the same time, Daniel, Hikaru's game, is that still on? Can we check in with Hikaru and Grishuk?
It is still on. It looks like it's a draw. Grishuk just offered one and Hikaru declined it, but it looks like Black has an endgame fortress here. Now, a draw would mean that both of them go to 6. That doesn't really change anything because... Okay, wait a second. Grishuk actually can't afford to lose this.
Yeah, and Jeffrey's shown as number 8.
Jeffrey's number 8. Dubov's number 7. I mean... Okay, now it's calculating it right now. Oh my God, Jeffrey and Amin have identical tie breaks.
What?
And that means you go to the second tiebreaker, in which case I think Jeffrey surpasses Amin by the narrowest of margins.
What's the second tiebreaker?
Goodness, this is such an obscure, this is so unlikely.
I don't think I've seen one situation.
I know there is a second tiebreaker. I'm not sure what exactly it is.
We'll need to bring up our regulations because it has not happened. That is the exact same. To the decimal is the same.
We have to go into the RCC rule book because this is such a rare situation. That's fascinating. And Dubov has type 19.5, Jeffrey with 19.25. So it's not like Daniil, qualifies by a large margin either.
Yeah, it's crazy that he, as if he had known it, he went for the draw in a better position. It worked out well for him, but it seemed it was very close to margin.
And Andreykin doesn't make it. He's in 10th. And Sarana and David Paravian also have 5.5, and neither of them make it either. So, I mean, my goodness. Tons of people with 5.5 don't make it.
Oof. This has been such a roller coaster for some of the players. Dimitri Andreykin missing out on the qualification. I mean, Tabatabai also did. Well, actually, Tabatabai could be, and depends on what's happening with the second tiebreaker there.
We should also wait until the round is over because what I've seen sometimes the system it only calculates some of the tie breaks after the round is over. So the current standings we should take with a grain of salt. So it's very likely that Wesley qualifies because his tie breaks were amazing before the round. Mm-hmm. But to be sure about whether Jeffrey or Dubov or Amin qualifies, we should wait until all of the games are over and it's official. It looks like Hikaru is not making any progress here against Grishuk.
Yeah, he has been trying to play on, instead of the quick draw that we could have expected. It feels like Hikaru, from the opening on, even though it was a solid exchange French, he went for c4 to go for the isolated pawn structure.
Hikaru just gave up the pawn on d5. Is he trying to... He's kind of flirting with losing now. I don't know about that. Now, the second tiebreaker, we are told, is Buchholz. And I believe that Buchholz is the sum of your opponent's points divided by 2, eliminating the lowest scoring one. I think it's something like that. I'm actually not an expert in tiebreakers, so.
I thought they only eliminate the lowest in a certain type of Buchholz. So we're gonna need confirmation on the exact situation.
B3 was winning for Black. Knight f4, knight c3. Sasha could have won the game there. And now it's a draw. But Hikaru just got really lucky there. B3, and Hikaru would have batted 5.5 out of 9. Still would have qualified. Hikaru's got the best of the 5.5 tie breaks. Now it's just a draw. Wow.
Missed opportunity by Grisham that could have given him a better spot in terms of the seeding for the knockout.
And it doesn't matter too much. One last remaining game is Eric against Noterbeck. Doesn't decide anything, but let's wait until this game ends so that we could draw certain conclusions about the tiebreaks. Nobody go anywhere. We're about to find out who makes the top 8. Eric trying to get to +1, which would be a very admirable result in the RCC. Okay. Robert, by the way, on 5 out of 9. Grandmaster Hess with an excellent performance in the RCC this week and winning the last game as well.
That is crazy. I'm just typing with as much speed as I can too, because I'm like, we're gonna need to know who makes it between Jeffrey and Amin if they have the exact same tiebreaker. So the second tiebreaker will be Buchholz, but that's not on our list. So I'm just hoping that we'll get an update on who's got the better Buchholz points.
I would imagine that it's the system automatically calculates that. So in that case, it would be Jeffrey. But again,
you think it will be? Okay.
But,
I hope so.
But we can't confirm that just yet. Okay, so Eric will probably end up getting flagged here. He's got 9 seconds. And that will conclude the games from the Saturday Swiss. Yeah, this is over. Rook takes G3 and H4. Takes D5, takes A3, and Eric's just going to resign here.
This game will not count, unfortunately, for either player for the qualification spot, but nevertheless, it was a good fight to witness. Noderbeck winning this endgame against the Chessbra himself, Eric Hansen. And we will now take a look at who made it to tomorrow's knockout format.
Wow. And here we go. So Fedoseev, Jospin, and Levon. Hikaru in 4th, Grishuk in 5th with 6 out of 9, and 3 people qualify with 5.5. That is rare. Wesley, Dubov, and Dubov's decision was justified. And Jeffrey makes the cut as well. Amin, Sarana, and Dmitry Andreikin, and Parabian, all with 5.5. All of them don't make it. Amin, he's got to be cursing his luck here. Same tie breaks as Jeffrey, but a worse Buchholz score, and he doesn't make it through the cut.
Yeah, that has been insane. And Jeffrey's last game, he even had winning chances against Dmitry Andreikin. So in a way, he got unlucky not being able to convert it. But it seems that the draw was enough. We will have a final check on that as soon as we are back. I think we'll take a very short break. And then we will be back with the rapid recap, with our Coinbase rapid recap. So don't go anywhere. We're going to need a bit of time to figure out which game was the best out of so many stellar performances of today. And we will also take a final confirmation on the qualification spots. Be right back.
This is going to be a real-time breakdown of Danny Wrench's games all time on chess.com.
That's cool. Oh! In the last month, I am playing 83.12.
I'm less accurate than them in every stage.
Yeah.
Man, that stings a little
You
bit.
should
Okay.
do the more game review.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so
Tuesday sucks. I gotta stop playing chess on Tuesday. Oh, it's because it's Title Tuesday.
Look how many blunders there were back in December 2020. And now December 2021, 1,600. Don't look at this number. Look at this number. Best.
Let's go to tactics. Mates. I'll probably need to work on these ones. Yep.
Every single rook fork that has presented itself to me, I have found. No one has a higher percentage of rook forks than I do. Yes, correct.
These are literally the knight forks that you missed.
I missed knight d6?
You saw it just now.
What the is wrong with me?
I could have done here and then taken this pawn, and I'm winning because my pawns get held together. That's probably the coolest part about this feature.
Like these positions against Hess. Rook there for rook e2. And he blunders mate in one. Oh my goodness. I'm awful.
Welcome back, everyone, to the broadcast of the Rapid Chess Championship presented by Coinbase. Now that the smoke has cleared, we will present in a moment the top 8 that makes it to tomorrow's knockout system. But before we head to the standings, Danya, we have finally managed to choose a best game of the day. Our Coinbase Rapid Recap is here.
It's always hard to choose the rapid recap game because of how many amazing high quality games are played each and every week. But ultimately, we had to go for the epic battle between Vladimir Fedoseev with the white pieces and Dmitry Andreikin with the black pieces. Both of them have qualified many times to the Sunday knockout. Always fun to see them play. And Fedoseev, Anna, this tournament was absolutely monstrous.
He has been slaying it, just completely demolishing the opposition, and a clear first place in a Swiss format where Fabiano Caruana was in the field, Hikaru Nakamura was in the field, and so many other super grandmasters. The game started very solid in a way, with just a fianchetto on the king side for white.
A King's Indian attack followed by c4, so sort of a Slav setup adopted by Andreikin, and after h3, he doesn't resist. He says, I'm going to take the knight, and I'm going to take your pawn. And I'm going to try to keep this extra pawn after queen c2. He doesn't just give away the c-pawn. He brings his queen down to d4 in order to keep this pawn defended. And you can't go knight a3, Anna, because of bishop takes a3. So Vladimir taking a very positional approach here.
Very positional approach to hold on to that pawn. But this a4 pawn push is also important from white's perspective, making sure that black cannot guard the c4 pawn with b5 and allows the knight to jump onto a3 later on.
Exactly. Rook can come to a4, knight can come to a3, and that's exactly what happened after bishop d2, rook c8. Vladimir developing his knight to c3, but then after bishop e4, bringing his rook up to a4. This move might have been underestimated by Andreikin, and all of a sudden, black is experiencing some difficulties here. If you move the bishop back, well, then you run into b3, and there's a lateral pin against the queen. So Andreikin deciding that it's more important to keep the bishop protected, but Anna, that meant he gives up this very important b7 pawn.
It gives up the pawn advantage that he had, and now it's simply a pair of bishops for white. The black king is still in the middle of the board, so development advantage and pair of bishops, plus this queenside structure where it feels like the doubled c-pawn should not make it to stay on the board for long because they are vulnerable, they are isolated.
Yes, they are. And the bishop on b4 is also vulnerable, as Fedoseev showed with this very nice move, knight c3 to a2. Always love retreating knight moves, hitting the bishop. Andreykin defends it with his own knight, but after the trade, Vladimir calmly brings his queen up to c3, and you can see how many difficulties black is experiencing with sustaining these pieces. The c5 pawn is overloaded. Andreykin trying to get his rook in to defend the queen, but Anna, after queen takes d4, rook takes d4, a brilliant tactic by Fedoseev, who notices that the rook and the knight are aligned on the same diagonal.
This was a crucial moment in the game, and he immediately grabs this chance to sacrifice a pawn with pawn to b3. It looks like it's a blunder because after c takes b3, black has a really strong pass pawn. But by pushing the b pawn, he vacated the b2 square for the bishop, and after bishop b2, there's no way back for the rook. There's no way to hold on to the material because, as we can see, the rook is hanging, and if you move the rook, the e5 knight is hanging.
And the b7 bishop, also very important. It's protecting the d5 and e4 squares. That meant Andreykin had no choice but to sacrifice the exchange, give it up. And the rest is a matter of technique, which Fedoseev showed exquisitely. f4, chasing away the first knight, chasing away the second knight, knight b6, counterattacking the rook, but Fedoseev calmly lifts it up to a5. He snags a pawn, gets the other rook to b1 to contain the b pawn, and the game is essentially over. But after rook takes d2, one final brilliant touch by Vladimir.
And that is a sacrifice. Again, this time the rook captures the knight on b6. If this is taken, well, it has a huge consequence. And that consequence is what would happen to the black king. The back rank checkmate has been a pattern today in many, many games. But this is a nice finishing touch that the knight is simply taken on b6.
Exactly. And a couple more moves were played. G6, bishop f3. He doesn't even rush to get it out because a7 is so winning. Now he gets it out of b6, and white is a full rook up. Another pawn bites the dust, and then another one. And in this position, but Andreykin decided that enough was enough and threw in the towel. It is never easy to defeat Vladimir Andreykin. I keep saying that. Dmitry Andreykin like this.
You just merged them into one player.
They are one player. But Vladimir Fedoseev, Anna, was up to the task, and that's why we chose this game.
Indeed. They already have a ship name. It's so cute. Now, on that note, Vladimir Fedoseev, Big Fish 1995 that is, qualifies as the #1 seed for Sunday's knockout, and his opponent will be none other than Jeffrey Zhang. We can now confirm that Jeffrey's Buchholz, which was the second tiebreaker, is better than Amin Tabatabai, so he's the one who takes the last and final qualification spot. This is the quarterfinals pairings, and Hikaru's opponent will be none other than the last opponent he had today, Alexander Grishuk.
Oh my goodness, we are going to have another epic Sunday. Fedoseev, Zhang, Hikaru, Grishuk, again, a rematch from round one. The last round of today's Saturday Swiss. And on the other side of the bracket, Levon against Wesley and Dubov against Jose. Anna, all 4 of these matchups are going to be epic. You are not going to want to miss the Sunday knockout.
I will not want to miss it, and I will grab a popcorn to watch it because it's going to be covered by Grandmaster Daniel Naroditsky, the one and only gentleman sitting right next to me, and I will be replaced by a much more charming and well-spoken and cultured caster, Yasser Seiravan. So GM Yasser Seiravan will be here tomorrow to host the show. Before we say goodbye, let me just also remind the viewers that we have so many events coming up, including the Women's Speed Chess Championship starting in May. So you will not want to miss the Women's Speed Chess Championship, which will begin in May, and it is the most important online tournament for titled women players in the world. Stay tuned on chess.com for all the action, which will begin in May with a prize fund of $650,000. There's also a lot at stake here at the Rapid Chess Championship, and tomorrow's knockout stage will determine who will take home the first prize. Lots of cash at stake and lots of GP points as well. So make sure to be back tomorrow, same time, same place, with Danya being here, the host, as well as Yasser returning. I cannot wait to see it. Danya, final words.
I can't wait either. It was another great Saturday. We're already 9 weeks in. I mean, I am looking forward to every single weekend. And I just wanted to say that, as usual, this was a pleasure to commentate with you, Anna. So I'd like to thank you. I'd like to thank everybody who was watching, and our producer, Matt. Another excellent way to spend an afternoon.
Thank you so much, Daniel. Likewise, huge shout out to the team behind this broadcast, as well as to you guys who make this show possible, who make the show meaningful, because why would we be broadcasting if no one watches? Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending your weekend with us, and spend Sunday with us too. Tomorrow, same time, same place.
Goodbye.